We'd like to welcome all of you to our regular City Council study session. Today is December 8th. Ruth, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Adamson? Here. Gray? Johnston?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Orr?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Cloud?
I'm glad you're here.
I always struggle what to say. We would like to excuse. Does that mean we're excited that he's gone? I don't know. Like to excuse the mayor today. He's on official business.
You could say you're thrilled to excuse.
I'm thrilled to excuse. Well, I don't know. He might watch this.
That's okay.
Councilman Bray will be here in just a little bit. He had an early morning appointment that he's just finishing up. We'll get started with our first item, or second item on the agenda, Pocatello Development Authority update. Representatives from the Pocatello Development Authority will discuss the authority's goals and projects, as well as the council's policies and expectations. Welcome. Please introduce yourself for the folks at home.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Tiffany Olson, and I serve as the appointed secretary to the Pocatello Development Authority. I have with me here today our chairman, Scott Smith, who is serving in his second term, and our current vice chairman, Chad Carr. I have been asked by the mayor and the chairman to provide you with an annual update on the projects and goals the PDA has accomplished in this last fiscal year. Our board is comprised of 9 members. Last year's vice chairman was Russell Myers. We also had Devin Hillam from the Bannock County as the commissioner's designee, Larry Fisher, Thomas Ottaway, Scott Turner, Chad Carr, and of course, the mayor and the Honorable Councilman Brown, who serves today as the council liaison.
Hey, what was that?
For the benefit of our new council member, Ms. Adamson, I will give you a little background to the PDA. Pocatello Development Authority was created by the City of Pocatello on July 14, 1988, and was granted authority by the city to undertake urban renewal projects which may be facilitated through the use of tax increment financing in accordance with Idaho law and the creation of an urban renewal area and plan approved by the City Council. Once an urban renewal area is established, the value of the property in the district is frozen at its current valuation. The property taxes collected over the life of the district are distributed to various taxing entities. Excuse me. I just lost my place. Okay, here. But the property taxes paid on the increased valuation goes to the PDA. The city recruits businesses or works through other recruiting efforts such as Bannock Development Corporation to attract businesses to these areas. The PDA then executes the projects identified within the plan, often broad in scope to encompass the maximum development within the area. Improvements may include upgrades or installation of utilities such as water, sewer, power, fiber optics, rail spurs or switches, or roadway construction, just to name a few. The PDA may issue bonded debt to provide funding for infrastructure or reimburse qualifying debt over time with the accrued increment. Projects not located within a district may receive funding from the authority's general fund. The general fund was solely financed through closed district balances up until 2014. At this time, the board approved transferring up to 10% of the district's revenue, if not otherwise committed, to the general fund as an administrative fee, so that those dollars may be used as unrestricted and discretionary monies, which allow for their use within or outside of an established district, as long as the purpose is for economic development and approved by the board. At the PDA meeting in November 2015, the administrative transfer totaled $152,817. The Central Corridor District, which was closed in 2010, held a final balance of $11,000, which was also consolidated to the general fund. The general fund balance as of September 30th was $3,438,648. Achievements in the last fiscal year include, in the top left corner, the Naval Ordnance District. The board agreed to pay up to $200,000 for power upgrades at the Naval Ordnance plant. These upgrades will allow for separate power meters for each building. It is anticipated this upgrade will attract new and retain existing businesses. Building 10 is completely finished and the equipment from Idaho Power has been purchased. The materials necessary to connect to the main line have been paid for but have yet to be installed. In the North Portneuf District, the PDA assigned its lease with J.H. Kelly to VA Metals LLC, an Idaho company who is owned by a group of investors from India. VA Metals also purchased the equipment and existing assets on the property from J.H. Kelly. In the lower left-hand corner, the Positron facility, located at 1500 Alvin Ricken Road, was acquired via judicial foreclosure proceedings in July due to an outstanding uncollected debt. Since the ISU Accelerator Center has left the airport, they are now leasing this facility, which includes payment of the utilities from the PDA for a term of 60 months. ISU has since renamed the facility the Idaho Accelerator Center Imaging Laboratory and is focused on methods of taking radiographs of material for the Army and the INL. In June, BBAD Investments LLC made an early payoff on a loan the PDA gave in March 2004 for property improvements in the South Cliffs subdivision, which is now home to the U.S. Forest Service District and BLM offices. Lastly, the PDA continues to support the Redevelopment Association of Idaho in their volunteer legislative efforts to save and enhance urban renewal laws for Idaho. Currently, over 28 of the 42 urban renewal redevelopment agencies from across the state are members. This photograph depicts the city corporate boundaries and identifies the location of the 4 tax increment finance districts I will summarize in the next few pages.
I think it's important to note that that's the corporate boundaries of the city, not one big urban renewal district.
Exactly.
Just want to make sure.
It's hard to tell, but the urban renewal districts are the small colored areas
Yes.
on that map.
This picture is the South Valley Connector. The PDA contributed $3.3 million towards the design and construction of this project. The connector opened with a grand ribbon cutting on December 23, 2015, and is used by an estimated 5,311 vehicles per day, pursuant to the traffic count at the intersection of Bannock Highway and South Valley Road.
Tiffany,
Yes,
would you entertain questions now
Sure.
or at the end?
whatever your preference is.
On this, I was just wondering, here's this bridge. How does that relate to blight or underdevelopment?
Well, the Central Corridor Fund had a significant balance at the district closure, and so those funds were used towards this project. I think Merrill could probably expand on the need to the community within economic development.
Well, I'll try to answer that, Merrill. This project in concept started clear back in 1969 when we could find some evidence of the commissioners and city people looking at this. There's always been a need for a connection at the south end of the valley and to be able to link things together. Also with the development opportunities along South 5th between the 2 interchanges. We've got the Caterpillar that's put down their roots and wanted to stay in Pocatello, and others down through there. The opportunities to be able to link that together also is a great opportunity.
Great.
So,
Thank you very much.
The first district we'll highlight today is the North Yellowstone. The North Yellowstone District is by far the most successful at this time. It was established in 2004 and will be closed in 2028. The increment added in the last fiscal year was just over $1.26 million, with a balance just higher than $2.427 million at the year end. In December 2004, the PDA borrowed $7.75 million and funded $6 million of construction. The rest was set aside as debt service reserve. The PDA entered into an economic development grant agreement with Costco to secure their facility here, and an incentive payment of $122,000 has been made for the last 9 years, with the final payment being made in 2017. New to this presentation is the employee statistics for each district. This information was provided by the Idaho Department of Labor. As of October, the North Yellowstone District employed 1,137 employees, with an average wage being paid of near $21,000 per year. New businesses within this district include Napa Auto Parts, Lithia Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, and Teton Honda. Next is the Naval Ordnance District. It was established in 2006 with a closure year of 2026. The increment added in the last fiscal year was $223,661 and held a balance of $420,396 on September 30th. The PDA General Fund paid $750,000 to the RDA as payment for employment incentives to keep Peterson Incorporated from relocating to Utah. Since this time, Peterson's has since relocated to the airport business property within the Airport Tax Increment Finance District. Improvements made within this district include the power I previously mentioned, railroad and pavement upgrades, as well as the sewer pump station, monitoring station, and building upgrades to retain manufacturing industries at the plant. In October, the district employed 455 employees with an estimated annual wage of just over $40,000. Those companies include SME Steel, Virginia Transformer, Eaton Metal Products, Atco Structures and Logistics, and Western Industrial. The airport district was established in 2010 and should close no later than 2033. The increment added in the last fiscal year was $105,437 with a fund balance of $329,416 on September 30th. Although recent upgrades to the culinary and fire flow water system included a buried 500,000 gallon water tank, a booster station, and a replacement well totaling approximately $2.3 million, were paid by the city, these upgrades are crucial to the development of the airport. The PDA has a site-ready plan prepared for prospective businesses, which incorporates these upgrades and many others to make development within the district more marketable. This district employs a total of 154 employees with an estimated average wage of $41,558. As a condition of Peterson's Economic Development Grant Agreement, they provide the PDA a semi-annual report verifying their company has a minimum of 50 full-time employees with a minimum wage of $14 per hour. In their last reporting in June of this year, they employed 55 full-time employees, with 51 of those earning an average wage of $21.84. Lastly, the North Portneuf District was established in 2007 and will reach its district life in 2024. The increment added was $83,421 with a balance as of September 30th, $114,751. As you will recall, the PDA entered into a repayment agreement to reimburse the city the purchase price of the Hoku property, as we have traditionally called it, of just under $1.1 million. In July 2014, the PDA paid the city $450,000 towards this debt, and again in October of last year, a payment of $300,000 was made. The repayment agreement provides for 15 annual installments of $17,740, with one remaining payment just over $29,000. VA Metals assumed the lease with PDA that PDA had with J.H. Kelly, of which expires in January of next year. Within the lease agreement and amendment, VA Metals has the first right to purchase the property, and by all intentions thus far still plans to do so. I maintain regular contact with VA Metals and their attorneys. For the last 8 weeks, they've had a group of engineers performing a gap assessment of the facility to determine what equipment will be necessary to acquire or improve to make the polysilicon plant operational. The gap assessment should be completed by the end of the year. Likewise, the appraisal being performed by Free & Associates from Salt Lake City is nearly finished, and the assessed value of the property should also be known by the end of this year. We conclude with the balance sheet provided by the Treasurer, Joyce Stroshine, at the end of the fiscal year, September 30th. What we didn't include in this presentation are the goals for the next fiscal year. We anticipate the position of the Planning and Development Service Director, who traditionally has served as the PDA Executive Director, to be filled. We are also highly motivated to prepare and submit a request for proposals from local and regional companies to create an economic development plan for the PDA and its jurisdiction. This will allow for us to identify the community's most pressing economic development needs and to come together behind a strategy for progressive and sustainable change. The benefit will come from successful implementation of goals and strategies contained in the plan, will positively impact the operations of all Pocatello businesses, large and small, and the lives of the Pocatello residents. We thank you for the opportunity to provide you with their information, and we appreciate your time and support. Are there any questions for us?
I'll start off with a couple. One, when the bank development was in here, you know, there's a lot of reports of really good stuff going on, but there's a counterintuitive thing that happens because our valuations have remained flat for 5 years. So how are we growing and being effective when the tax valuations remain flat for 5 years? It's kind of unprecedented. you should have some sort of inflationary stuff going on with the houses and businesses and stuff that would, at a minimum, be driving it up at 1% or more a year.
And maybe I can speak to it or attempt to. Our board, the Pocatello Development Authority, doesn't have a lot of control over local financial economic conditions, and I think that's really what you're talking about. But what we do have some ability to do is provide incentives, particularly in these TIF districts to the extent we can, to improve the property and the value within those particular districts, which has increased the tax base in those districts. And it's, for example, with the North Yellowstone district, that with all the development up there, the property values have gone up. That incremental tax increase is what the board's been using to pay off the debt from up there, and it's all been working. So what we can do as a board is focus on those particular TIF districts. Outside of those TIF districts, maybe there's a reason to consider new TIF districts. There hasn't been a new one created since 2010. Outside of those TIF districts, we have used some of what we call our general fund money to assist with certain projects, generally on a smaller scale, as we can and are allowed by statute. But unfortunately, we can't just apply it to the whole city. It's beyond what we're allowed to do as a board. I hope that kind of...
Well, it kind of does,
Yeah.
but I guess my concept is a little larger than just TIF districts.
Well, it would be a lot larger than this board.
That's all we're allowed really to focus on is TIF districts and then a few small things maybe outside of those.
Okay.
We really don't have much ability to go beyond that.
You talk about the smaller projects with the general fund. We've just done a couple. Can you elaborate on, use that as an example? With Bully Dog.
Okay, I'll mention two, if that's okay, because I understand the accelerator is outside as well. Is that right?
It currently is.
Yeah, we have this accelerator center that we're leasing to ISU, and personally, I hope ISU at some point really wants to buy it from us. We don't want to be a landlord forever. That's not our goal. But that's one of them, for example. We did have a potential buyer who came in. We thought they were buying it. They went bankrupt. We got in a mess and got it back. And now we've got it into the hands of someone who can actually use it and afford it. Then we also have this situation I think everyone knows about where we have participated in assisting Bully Dog. They go by another name. Their parent company has another name that I don't recall offhand. But they were in American Falls. They wanted to come to Pocatello into the warehouse district on 1st Street, which we're always hoping that we can improve that area to the extent we can and get good businesses in there to avoid the warehouse blight that we're always concerned about. And at the same point, we know that they went into the building where the Bridge restaurant was at, and we were able to find a place in the old Yellowstone Hotel that was vacant and empty and really needed some improvements, and we've been able to assist the Bridge to move over there, improve the situation on that corner of downtown. I think they're yet to fully open. But this is what I would consider a smaller project, doing what we can to improve the economy in the warehouse district, and then over there in downtown near the Yellowstone Hotel, which are areas that all are of concern to us.
And most importantly, retain those jobs. We would hate to have seen the Bridge be put out of business. They have some culinary experts that work there, and so it's nice to see that they're able to find a new location and sustain their business.
And the business from American Falls was seriously looking at Denver, Colorado, and we would have lost those jobs altogether.
They were, and to be clear, I don't want to speak for the entire board. Our board. Our focus is not always just purely economics or just purely jobs. There are other entities and boards out there that's their primary focus. Maybe Bannock Development, that might be their primary focus. Ours is multi-layered. It's alleviating blight. It's redevelopment of areas of town that just need to look nicer. But if we can also include economic development and jobs altogether, that's icing on the cake.
Mr. Council President, Scott, what you've shared with us today, what Tiffany's shared with us, is very positive. You come under some criticism. What are some of those criticisms that might come to your organization?
Well, I don't know if I've sat down and anticipated all of them, but I can tell you, Chad and I have only been on the board for, I don't know, less than a couple of years. So you'll see that these 4 TIF districts were created long before he and I were on this board. I know historically in the past, there were, the PDA had struggled with some financial problems. They may have been a little bit upside down on their finances years ago. The board, even before he and I got on, have made huge strides in making sure that we are financially solvent, that the deals we are putting together, the incentive packages we're doing, are not going to get us in trouble. So those sorts of criticisms, I understand, occurred in the past. But
Way before I was chairman.
Yeah, way before you were there. And maybe, and I'm not taking credit for it because the corner was turned before we got on the board. But that's something we're very careful about at this point.
Well, I want to applaud the member of the PDA board and the staff that supports the PDA. I've got a little experience or exposure to the PDA, and again, the PDA, as I look at the analogy of it, is kind of the mouse that nibbles on the elephant's ear. You're out there doing little things that some people may take exception to, but at the end of the day, the PDA and its staff is very concerned about how they expend and disperse those TIF monies that come into those districts. I can tell you that there have been times, there have been hours of discussion go on to make a decision that occurs there. Also, as has been stated, many of the things that these individuals on the PDA inherited have been there for many, many years. As you saw in the document that Ms. Olson provided, one loan that was originated in 2004, I think, was cleared from the books this year. Positron was an early issue that the PDA board decided to take and pursue for judicial foreclosure. So if you ever are concerned about how they're spending taxpayers' dollars, stop in and visit a meeting and get an idea of the effort and work that goes in. Thank you so much.
I agree, and you have to know that even though the spots are isolated, everything that's done in those districts impacts our entire town. I mean, there's no question about that. And when you go through that list over the years, it's big and it's pretty awesome. To me, the connector's a good example. The connector's awesome for those of us that live out there, but it's going to change our town on the south end out there over the next 10 years. It's going to be remarkably different, and that's going to happen because of the connector. I don't think there's any question about that. So I think it's awesome, all the projects that continue to go on have made our town better.
And I think the creation of this economic development plan for the city, for the PDA, is really going to be a wonderful project to undertake. It will allow us to focus on certain areas of town that may need a little extra attention, or that may be heavy commercial, although it may be a mixed use, and so we might be able to identify some different needs and focus on retaining and recruiting businesses for those areas, maybe on a case-by-case, a block-by-block basis or something, so that we can have that connectivity and really maximize the growth within the city.
We've had some great successes. Some of our smaller projects sometimes haven't turned out quite the way we wanted them,
but that's part. I think that's part of the business.
It is.
I think that's to be expected.
It is.
It just has to be.
And if I can just speak to that, we've been very careful in the last couple of years that when we enter into some of these smaller projects, or even the large ones, that we're very careful to protect the board and the public monies that we oversee with regard to these incentive packages we put together. So for those situations where the business comes in and says, with this great idea and it doesn't quite work out very well, we can still protect the money that we oversee. So.
I have one other. Recently, there's been an interesting discussion about trying to put all of the senior citizen type groups under one roof. Not necessarily creating a lot of jobs, but we could take a building that maybe exists that might be a little bit blighted and bring all of these people together because we need some improvements to our senior citizen center. Is that something that could be entertained through the financing?
Commissioner, I'm glad you brought this up. We would love people to bring to us as many great ideas and great proposals as they can. Sometimes I wonder if, we have a lot of smart people on our board, but I guarantee you we do not, as a board, just come up with all the best ideas for town. That sounds like something that could potentially be. I mean, there's an application process. You fill it out, it gets considered, it goes through staff. A lot like city permits and such, sort of. And
Jim, that's a great suggestion.
And it is.
That group that's working on that should.
And I think I think there is a lot more potential for our board if other groups in town, other developers, people interested in economic development, understood what we could potentially do to help them.
One other thing that, in addition to this, that I've thought about is housing. The other night we had some people that indicated we have a shortage of 1,300 housing units and affordable housing. And it looks to me like we ought to be able to do something here to enhance the housing stock, which is getting older in Pocatello.
Our board has discussed the housing shortage. By law, by statute, it really encourages our board to, instead of going out and just building homes, because that's not what our board's going to do, but to work with what the statute calls private enterprises. So work with developers, and maybe there's some way we can provide an incentive package together that makes sense for the private company to come in and kind of do these things.
And there has been a developer that's come before the PDA that wants to build some lower cost rental.
Yeah, and we've had developers come and we've had developers go. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. These are the kind of projects we'd love to participate in if they come to us. So
And that senior center group you mentioned, the mayor and I met with them this last week.
Okay.
And so it's something that we are looking at. They were focused on maybe taking an existing location and retrofitting it to what their needs would be. And we encourage them to perhaps maybe look at an area where we could build a facility or expand to facilitate it with New Knowledge Adventures, AARP, I think the Senior Center, and a number of others. I think there would be about 1,000 people that could use that building on any given time, with some selected activities that would happen there as well. So it is something that we most likely will talk about at our subsequent PDA meetings that we are interested in. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's great.
One point I'd like to make that I think is really important is the unique relationship that the Pocatello Development Authority has with the City of Pocatello. They're separate entities. Other development authorities across the state hire their own staff and pay their own staff from those administrative fees. Because of the relationship that we have with the city, that work is done by city staff because it benefits us all as a whole. And so that money that we would spend on administration, it now becomes free to work on some of these smaller projects. So.
Tiffany mentioned this during her presentation. The city planner is typically our executive director. Our executive director often fields most of the telephone calls, the initial calls, does a lot of the work, the day-to-day work that's required by the board. City doesn't have a planner at the moment, which means we do not have an executive director at the moment. Tiffany here has been very good about sort of informally filling in that position. So I encourage the city council to the extent they can, find a planner and find an executive director for us. In the interim, we may be considering the appointment of an interim executive director. But right now, Tiffany is doing awesome at it. And I just want to commend her on the record, so to speak.
Thank you very much. One more?
Yeah. I really appreciate the work that the PDA does. I think we've done some things that's really held Pocatello's status over the last few years in keeping us from sinking. Having said that, one of the things I really think is important to have in context, I've been paying a lot of attention to per capita income. Per capita income, and this we only get it for a county, but per capita income for Bannock County has been on a slide for several years. We've gone from being ranked mid-20s and we slid in from 2014 to 2015 from 31 to 32 as counties rank in the state. So I really would encourage a perspective about not just jobs, because too many of our people are working too many jobs. We need to get good jobs in here that free our people up to be real good family members. It's really hard to be a good family member when you're working around the clock just to make ends meet. So that's one of the things I would really encourage some sensitivity to as we go forward. One of the numbers here, I did a little crunching. The average wage is $21,000. That's $10 an hour. That's not living wage. And we've got to find a focus that goes to these other places where we're getting the $40,000, $41,000. If I were to encourage you to prioritize, that's where I'd really encourage you prioritizing to go, is to those heavy hitter jobs and then they'll take care of the jobs that are $21,000.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was the drive, or the bully dog movement we just facilitated, was to bring in higher paying jobs into Pocatello. I know that where we're starting, we have a growth plan going forward with higher paying jobs.
Part of the incentive package, for example. See, I think what you're talking about is very insightful, and it's been something the board's been talking about, particularly this year, in the transactions that have come through. Bully Dog being one of them, like Chad mentioned. Part of the incentive package was that they have to maintain a number of jobs at a certain average level of pay, which I don't recall offhand, but I remember it being somewhere twice what you're talking about. So it's been an issue that I'm glad you brought up, and it's really important, and we're really trying to focus on that. It's not always easy, because we don't just create jobs out of nowhere. Companies come in, but we're really trying to incentivize what we consider the best employers at the best rates that we can find anyway.
And thank you, Scott, because the PDA is very acutely aware of this. I got a call here a month ago from an individual that says, how come this entity, not the PDA, it's BDC or something like that, how come they're not going after this company to come in? I said, well, I'd be interested to find out, so I'll go investigate. As I investigated it, the decision was made at a level that never even come before the PDA, that the county would not, or the city, or whoever here in this area would not pursue that company and the jobs associated with it, because they were, in fact, $10 an hour jobs. I don't know that the PDA ever heard about it, or whether it ever crossed the table for the PDA. But again, sometimes these decisions on whether those people are coming and whether that's pushed on down to the PDA is done prior to the PDA getting a lot of information on it. So
we've had, as a PDA board, there has been an unwritten rule that we have minimum wage, not minimum wage, but minimum standards for those wages for a number of years. What you're looking at is the North Yellowstone development, which is all commercial. And that was done in 2004. And it was really difficult in that situation to set a minimum standard for retail any much higher than what that was. So, I mean, that was more directed at a blighted area for development rather than the actual per hour jobs. So,
And there is quite a bit of food industry within that district as well.
Yes.
So typically higher level paying positions. And I apologize, with the introduction of my presentation, I should have commended Councilman Orr. He has sat on the Pocatello Development Authority Board as a member outside of his council liaison seat for a number of years, and he volunteered to be the chairman of the PDA, and Scott just relieved him of those duties the year before last. So we thank Councilman Orr for the time he spent both as a member and a chair on our board.
Well, thank you very much for your time and insight and update.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we invite all of you to attend anytime you can. Attend our board meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 3, ExecuTime software presentation. Representatives from ExecuTime software will be present to review and answer council's questions regarding a time, attendance, scheduling product to track employee hours. Human resource and information technology staff will be available to discuss the city's employee timesheet process.
Chris, Heather.
Hi.
Welcome.
Council. I'm Chris Sorensen, the CIO for the city. We have Mark Johnson here, as senior account executive or something like that from SunGuard.
Old account executive.
Heather Buchanan from Human Resources. Joyce is back there to answer other financial questions. About 3 months ago, we came to you and presented a proposal to go to an electronic timekeeping system. You looked upon it very favorably. You mentioned you would like to have a presentation from ExecuTime. We brought Mr. Johnson in a couple of months ago. He presented to the staff and the employees, but we did not have him brief you, and according to your instructions from 3 months ago, you wanted the presentation. So we brought him back in today to give you a little more highlights. Since that original presentation, requirements have expanded for the program, upping the costs. So we want to represent the costs also to you at this time. So with that said, I will drive. Well, actually, I think I can send the mouse over here and I'll let him drive.
This little thing right here brought some flashbacks.
And this
I
was
can
our
even
original.
remember the sound of it when you put it in the machine. Yeah,
This was our original proposal that we would like to go to because it would definitely reduce the amount of paper we're using and a few other things. I actually found a stack of these back in our supply closet the other day. And I'm surprised that somebody hadn't thrown them out, and I've really not found anybody who remembers using them. That's how old these are. But I think most of us remember at least one job in our
That tells
lives
you
where
how
we
old
used
some
these.
people are.
Oh, yeah. Rode a horse to work, you know.
Uphill both ways in a snowman. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this morning. This is a picture actually from last time I was here, and I went on a little run up to the top of Chinese Peak, and on the way up there just saw a lot of beautiful things. As I was flying in this week, I thought, well, maybe I can do another run. What'd you guys do with the mountain? I can't even see it. But beautiful place. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So let me see if I can operate from here. So as Chris said, I'm Mark Johnson. I'm account executive with ExecuTime. I've worked with local government organizations since just before 2000. I actually worked with SunGuard, your ERP vendor, from 2000 to 2010. And I got to know ExecuTime when I was with SunGuard because they've been a partner of SunGuard and have partnered with the Naviline system that you're running for your accounting, your HR, and your payroll for many years now. So I felt really good about joining their company back in the beginning of this year, but there's some bigger reasons other than just liking the company. They're fully focused on public sector. All we do is time and attendance systems for public sector. As you can imagine, and I'm sure you're well aware, there can be some very unique challenges to providing time and attendance systems for local government. Typically when you're dealing with different organizations like fire and police and different bargaining units and things like that, there are a lot of different rules that need to be built into the system to accommodate the agreements that you have with your employees. And we have all that in place. We have a very strong bidirectional interface with the Naviline system. I think today we have just over 80 customers that are running Naviline and ExecuTime together. So I think it's a good reduction of risk when you're looking at different options for time and attendance, and we're very good at meeting the needs of the organizations that we're serving today, and we'd love to be able to add you to that list. That's the hope. And if I can get this mouse to work. So actually, I'm not going to do a software demo today. I'm just going to go over I'm just going to go through the PowerPoint because I don't think, we went through it in quite a lot of detail on my last visit, and they can attest to what we can do. But we have two different systems that are integrated. We have our time and attendance system, which can handle the needs of all of your employees, and we have advanced scheduling. Advanced scheduling is meant for public safety, so police, fire, sometimes public works as well. And that fully integrates with our time and attendance system. Where we fit into the puzzle with your ERP system, we're in the blue down there at the bottom. So you can enter information into our system either through a web browser or through a time clock, similar to what those little cards fed back in the past. But today you can use either a barcode scan card, you can use a proximity card, biometric, or you can clock in using an ID and password. We also have a mobile device available if the organization would entertain that. Again, we're fully integrated with the Naviline system, so your HR, payroll, and accounting system. So what we do is we bring in data from that system, the employee data, and the accrual balances come in on a regular basis. And then when it's time to run payroll, all we're concerned about is collecting time and time information. And all of that is then brought back into the Naviline system. So when you run payroll, it's a very simple process of creating a file that's then consumed by the Naviline system on the other end. Keep using my mouse. So again, we're all about capturing, managing, and then integrating time information. And the users can access the system through a web browser, whether they're a end user, employee, a supervisor, or a system admin person or payroll person. They have that same look and feel through the browser. We can also set up a simplified browser on a PC and do kind of a virtual time clock. All the information is going to end up on the timesheet. So today, I think this is being done by hand, manually, and it's very time intensive, but this automatically feeds the timesheet. Once it's in on the timesheet, it can also be updated and changed as necessary. We do a lot of things around job costing. So when time is put into the system, it can be associated with grants and projects and different work orders and things like that. Again,
can those be adjusted by the individual employee, or does that require a higher level of authority?
That's up to how you want to set the system up. So the first thing we do, we come in and we look at all of your business processes and how you want to set the rules up. So you can allow individual employees to make changes based on what you feel comfortable with. Or you can set up, in certain departments, you may want to set up a timekeeper, and they make all of those adjustments and are responsible for that. It's up to you and kind of the aptitude of the individual employee and what you want from them. Again, we can capture all that information via time clock, via mobile device, and then with advanced scheduling, the shifts are all managed within that advanced scheduling piece. We can help the PD or fire trade shifts and do things like that. All that information from advanced scheduling is then fed into the time and attendance system. We do a lot of things in the background. So when people are putting their time in, we're going to have rules built around overtime or around, you might have something called callback pay, where someone comes back at a certain hour and they work a certain amount of time. There may be an agreement where they're paid 2 hours when they come back for 15 minutes. Things like that. We handle all that behind the scenes. So when the pay is entered into the system or the hours are entered into the system, it automatically obeys those rules. Right there, we're just showing that there's some, and it's a really bad screenshot for this projector, I'm sorry. Things that we're showing up here are, there's information shown there for projects or grants. On the left-hand side there, that one circle is showing that if there are rules that are being fired, so if somebody has worked a number of hours, it's going to kick them into overtime. That'll be very apparent to them and also to the supervisor, and then to payroll. There's going to be an alert there to let them know. It's not a stop or anything, it's just letting them know.
So this is like when they clock in and they go past, the supervisor gets a notice, an email or something?
The supervisor will see on here that they worked more hours than a normal work week.
I mean, when do they get that? Way after they've worked, or do they get that like that day so that they know not to schedule them?
Well, it depends on how you set up the rules. So they can get that day. If they go into the system, they can look and they will see that day. But it's not going to necessarily stop them from working those hours.
But I mean,
yeah.
So it's still going to be time intensive of the supervisor looking at the data, right?
Typically, no. They're going to review this when it comes to the end of the pay period. They're going to review and make sure that all of that time that's shown is accurate and meeting the rules that you've set up. If you're setting up rules where someone cannot work overtime, then that's going to be built into the system too. Does that make sense? If you have the ability for people to swap their overtime for comp time, we can allow the employee to do that right from the screen as well. And then up here on the top, you can't see it very well, but that's always tracking the regular hours, the benefit hours, and all those things across the board. We also are set up to apply rules according to FLSA periods. So you may have people that their overtime is based on a 21-day or 27-day or 28-day pay cycle, but they're being paid every 2 weeks. Well, we can calculate and take care of all of that automatically based on how we set up the rules in the system.
Heather won't have to do it by hand anymore?
No.
With an adding machine?
No.
She's got beads. We don't have that.
So real quickly, these are just a few of the self-service features of the system. The clocking in and out, obviously, electronic timesheets. I think one of the big things that when we sit down and look at how you're going to do this is the timesheet approval process. So typically organizations are going to have their employees check a box that says, yes, my time is accurate. And when they do that, it's a date and time stamp with their acknowledgement that information is correct. And then it will go on to the supervisor and they'll do the same thing. And then from there, it's going to go on to payroll and they will then be able to process payroll. How much further do you want me to go into the software overview? Because we can stop here and answer questions, or I can...
Okay.
I get it, I think.
I think we got it.
You get an idea of what we're providing? Yeah. I think you all...
So, in a lot of industries, they want employees to do their time management by project or task.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, I'm assuming this allows you to enter...
Yes.
You wouldn't want to get down to every 10 or 15 minutes, but attorneys do it all the time for charges, and so that capability is there also.
Yes. Yeah, and you can go in and you can split time against projects, grants, work orders, however you want to set those things up within the system, and they can split them by either percentage. Say you work an 8-hour day every day and you're pretty much spending 25% on this grant, 50% on this project. You can do it that way. You can do it by hours or minutes. You can do it by total hour or actual clock in and clock out time. It's a lot of variety.
Our current system still allows it, except that you're doing it on a paper product. What this is going to do is move you to electronic. So, currently our payroll system allows that. So all this is going to do is take you one step further.
But the benefit of that then is if we want to audit a project for time management on that project, it would be much easier to go back and execute it or extract it from the electronic file than hand.
You can still do it electronically off our SunGuard system, because in order for us to know what it costs, this is a time card system. All it does is it feeds it in there. And so instead of manually keying everything in, now it's going to electronically be there, because as you swipe your card, everything's going to be populated, right? I don't have to manually key it. That data is still there, so when you go to payroll and you start to process, we're still doing that part. We can get that now.
Okay.
This doesn't change that. This
Takes the
facilitates
labor
the front-end
out.
labor part. So instead of spending your time on the keying as a payroll clerk, I'm going to spend more time reviewing and ensuring that what's been entered is what should be entered. So I give more time. Your time's going to shift from entry to review.
To review for accountability.
And the other thing I thought we should point out too, that you kind of highlighted, there's an audit side of this, so that how we determine the rules for who can enter and who can make adjustments. There is an audit report that tells me who adjusted what time, when. Right. And so if we question any changes, we can go back and we know who did the adjustment, and we can clarify as to the reasoning. So it provides an in-depth review.
Okay, so this is, the interest in implementing this is not to keep a closer eye on our employees per se, but the labor and intensive of the paper generation and reviewing all that, and allowing the managers or the supervisors to look at what's been put in rather than all the entry or reviewing. Okay.
I think it's two things. I think it's accuracy of reporting,
Okay.
When you're manually writing down a time versus sliding a card and it's noting the time, I mean, there's room for error. It's human error, not intentional error. I'm not implying that. I'm just saying it's human error. So the more electronic you become, the tighter you're going to be on that. That's where your savings comes from. And then the other part too is, yes, the paperless part.
Okay.
But it's your suggestion that every employee in the city of Pocatello is going to punch in the morning and punch out at the end of the day. Is that what you're telling us?
Hourly employees, yes. And so the increase in cost is because of me, because I asked for time clocks. The perception of having some employees be able to sit down at a computer and log in because that's their workstation versus an employee who, say, drives a snowplow. I mean, if they have to wait in line at a kiosk in the front lobby of street to log in for their time, we're not paying them for time that they should be working. It sounds minuscule, but it feels like a mistreatment between traditional white and blue-collar workers. If we go to all hourly employees clocking in and out and a time clock being available at each facility, and in a large facility like City Hall, we would have 2 time clocks, police would have 3. Their ability to clock in and out, we would use a proximity reader, so they would just kind of wave their card at it, and then along they would go. So we're going to be paying them for the hours that they're actually working, not what they just say, well, I got here at, around 8. Well, no, you got here at 7:45. We should be paying you for those 15 minutes that you're working. So exempt employees, no, I have no intention of them clocking in and out. They're exempt. The only time that would be a difference is, say you had an exempt employee on a performance improvement plan for attendance, then they would clock in and out at the discretion of the manager.
Any other questions?
And while they wouldn't use the time clocks, the exempts would still use the system, whether from the time clock or from a desktop system, to do exceptions. I'm on leave, I'm on vacation, I'm sick, I'm in training. If you're trying to track one of those other categories, if you would be paying the employee for other than normal work hours, the exempt employees would still use the system.
Questions?
Well, I got one, because the gentleman here mentioned about switching hours to comp time. Do our supervisors have that capability?
What happens on that, a person, let's say I'm an hourly employee and I'm subject to FLSA, on my timesheet I'm supposed to write on their comp or overtime. That way, when the payroll administrator gets it, receives the document, she'll send finance us a summary of who wants to be on what. So let's say I'm on comp, now I want overtime. I get an email saying that Joyce wants overtime on this pay period. Now, you can't have both in a pay period. Our system won't allow that. We're not set up that way. SunGuard does not function with both. And so you have to choose in a 2-week cycle which one you want, overtime or comp. But yeah, we get the emails. We change the coding in the system to say you are now going to get paid overtime. You're not going to receive comp time if you go over your 40 hours in a 2-week period or in a 1-week period. Okay.
And so you think all of our department heads are good with this, with the time clock thing? I mean, is that something that department heads see need for, or all on board for? I just see some places where it's going to be a little problematic for certain groups.
There has been resistance from some department heads. They feel like we're going to hurt morale with this system, like you're making employees accountable for their time, or we don't trust them. That's not the case. What we're more worried about is those employees who, they show up a little early, they stay a little late. They never get paid for that time. You hold over to cover for an employee who's running late. I know this happens within the fire department. I'll work this 15 minutes while you drop your kids off or whatever. I mean, you have life fluxes that happen, but people should be paid for that time that they're working for the city.
Well, and the other person's going to be deducted for that time.
And they shouldn't be paid for time that they're not there.
Well, and as we're going to talk about in a minute, the efficiencies and what that means as far as budget goes. I mean, that's been part of our discussion for the last couple of years as we've really delved into the budget, and this is a simple area to address.
It is. And I look at it too from the control point, as we're tasked with controls for the city, this is just another area. Right now, yeah, there's a lot of trust factor, and I'm not saying it's not entitled, but we want to be fair to each employee and treat them accurately. Just as Heather's saying, we want to pay them appropriately for the time they're giving to the city in working, and to treat them correctly.
Well, and if I always show up 10 minutes early and my cohort shows up 10 minutes late and we get paid the same amount, after a while it starts to wear on me.
Well, there's another kind of morale hit on that if you have people that are doing that.
And Chris is down there saying, I don't care about all that. I just want all that paper stuff to go away.
That's why you have 3 department heads here.
Okay.
You want to continue? Do you want to talk the scheduling tool?
We've been through it.
Yeah, I mean, you said it was going to cost more. I saw some numbers here.
Let's go numbers. And I've lost my glasses. I'm with you. I can't see the dang mouse on the screen.
Where is it?
No, that was not the right thing to do.
Oh, there's your mouse.
Okay, I got my mouse.
Roger just said the IT guy can't do it.
The IT guy's blind with his pair of glasses, so.
There's a button on there that'll increase the size of the font.
It'll still be more.
Just the mouse. The mouse really showed up.
Okay, we're getting there. It seems the focus decides to join us. Okay. So, these numbers were reflected in the original presentation to you. Since we did the original presentation, we firmed up our numbers of employees that would be licensed, and we had to take it to 750. Where the big increase came from is originally we were looking at the fire department only using the scheduling tool, and we had 100 licenses in the bid. Since then, the police have indicated they wanted to use it. That upped us to 215 the license, significantly changing the numbers. So our installation costs went up almost $20,000 as a result of that, with our maintenance costs rising about $1,500. In addition to that, we were originally only looking at a small number of time clocks at some of the more labor-intensive areas where you have a lot of employees show up at once, streets, sanitation, because we didn't want people waiting in line to log on to a kiosk. So with the time card machine, cost came in at about $29,000. This does reflect a 25% discount from executive time, since it would be a bulk case. It would up our total year zero cost to $139,000. Originally, that was about $77,000. So we've seen a significant year zero cost increase. The annual maintenance, that's peanuts with what we pay overall for.
And so after year 0, moving forward, then we're just looking at that $13,000 about, and then maintenance on the time machines here and there.
How often does that annual maintenance fee adjust?
I went over, since we've had SunGuard, I pulled all the original contracts and what we pay, and we've dropped some of things. The best I can tell you is in about 15, how many years have we had it now? About 15 years?
1998 is when we went on SunGuard.
Total maintenance costs have only gone up about 17%. Now, most of those have occurred in the last couple of years. We have seen some 4 or 5% increases over
But
the
that's
last.
with SunGuard, so I'm asking on executive time how often.
This is was actually purchased through SunGard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the only piece of this that we buy directly from Executive Time will be the time clocks.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't here for your first presentation, so I don't.
Yeah, that's
I'm not as
The rest of
familiar as
it
these
is
guys.
quoted through,
Okay.
it's an add-on to an existing contract with SunGard. It's really a small piece of what we pay overall for SunGard.
What's the workload going to look like in a particular department? Let's say now we've got a person that is the timekeeper in a department that when the day comes, they've got to have all that put together and it goes over to the city. How's that going to change in that department for that person? Is it going to be easier, harder, more time, less time?
So they'll log into the system from their computer and they'll be able to see the employees' timesheets. They can just do like a quick check if there's anything that needs adjusted. Like if the employee emails in, hey, I forgot to clock out this day, can you adjust my time? I'm not a fan of employees having that ability. I would like to have it tracked within house why there's an adjustment being made to what was logged. So then they would then submit it, and then I was hoping it would route through management before it would go to payroll.
So you can set it up that way.
Yes.
Yeah, the key time savings with this will be, right now, the timekeepers within each organization take all those paper timesheets and have to manually enter those. They will no longer have to do that.
Okay.
You'll just go online, make any adjustments, and make the appropriate approvals.
They'll just have to go down through and then if somebody isn't completed theirs, they'll have to get with them and get it completed.
And again, you greatly reduce that human error factor of, was that an 8 or is that a 9 that he wrote? And either having to verify it or guessing right or guessing.
From payroll processing, the part I like better about this is the fact that they're going to have more time for review and accuracy, so corrections and adjustments on future payrolls should go down. Just for that example, somebody entered their time as this, or I didn't put the right project code, or I coded the project code incorrectly. I mean, all those parts play into it. Where it's electronic, you kind of remove the human right error of interpretation, or forgetting to input it. That payroll administrator is going to have more time to do that review process, and the hope would be that you would have more accuracy in your processing each time.
Well, the county uses a system like this, and there's someone within each department that's the timekeeper that calls you up and tells you that you haven't done it right, or you haven't submitted it.
The first 2 hours of payroll processing every other Wednesday is spent just reviewing hours on our side. So if we see issues, because we have a lot of Cognos reports that we go and we run checks to make sure people have done entry correctly, it's going to facilitate that process, make that shorter on our end, because you're going to already have done it on this end. Before it can download, all those checks are really going to have occurred already, and we're going to utilize those people when they're present and available as they're doing the processing. So I think in the long run, you're going to have a better system of processing.
So any employee in the city that's eligible to get paid overtime will be on the time clock. Is that
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
Okay.
It'll also reduce the time of ordering paper, stockpiling the paper, printing out the time cards every 2 weeks, distributing those
HR
paper
hoarding
sheets
those
out.
time
Would you
clocks,
try
cards all over my
to
office.
stop grinning so much when you talk about that?
I know, he's so excited.
When I got here just 2 years ago, when I was a youth, I worked in a printing plant. And I thought I'd moved back and was working back in a printing plant when I first got here. Stuffing machines and folders and bursters and so yeah, I'm very happy to see paper going on.
Well, I think this is where supervisors got to inform their direct reports of this is the reason and rationale is this, and as you've said here twice now, as I've recorded, is for accuracy and to be able to spend more time with review rather than all the other things that were being done. So,
and I think it gives the supervisor an additional tool, especially where you put an employee on a performance improvement plan, that you can put some legitimacy into the numbers and things, and
help them improve.
Certainly is a backup to that.
So those are the things.
And I think if there's an employee that's overly concerned about this, they have to question why they are concerned.
Yes.
That's exactly true.
Sounds like an employer.
Sorry. Well, when you write
Again,
checks.
my last slide is the return on investment slide. These numbers and these calculations are not my own. They are actually provided by Executive Time. I did go on the most conservative estimates when it comes to percentages and the such. The American Payroll Association numbers, again, I went on the bottom side of all of these, and using the complete bottom side, the most conservative numbers, it still reports over a $350,000 annual return on investment. Even if that's only 10% accurate, we quickly recover our money in implementing this.
But we never know that.
These are
that's
soft
one of those
numbers.
things. It sounds great, but we'll never know. We're never going to have $300,000 extra in a line item there.
No,
Sounds good.
There's a few things on there that are hard numbers. The paper costs, those are hard numbers. The toner costs and something. Some of the other things are just really estimates based on statistics.
That was going to be my question is, do you feel that there is, I mean, $270,000 is a lot. Do you really feel like we have that problem, or that's just in theory based on the American Payroll Association?
$70,000.
Yeah, okay. So,
I just had a quick question. So this is for,
Tiffany, who are you?
Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Well, you just
No,
tell us who you are
would you
first.
tell us who you are,
I'm
please?
sorry. Tiffany Olson with the Legal Department. I just had a question. This is for hourly employees only, this proposal?
Yes.
And so if it were for, say for example, one of the attorneys in our office was on vacation, would he still keep track of his timesheet on a paper timesheet, of which then I would manually enter?
No, they would have access to the system. They could go in and log their exception hours, which is anything
Okay.
outside their normal schedule. Sick leave, vacation, if you guys are tracking travel, that sort of thing, FMLA leave, that can all be tracked online.
Okay, perfect.
We're like, time cards need to die.
And we are paying for the mobile version of this
Would you
also,
like to see that?
which allows you to do it actually from a smartphone, so.
And then I just had one last question. For those employees like in water and WBC that are on an on-call system, how would this work for them to account for their time when they leave their home and respond to a call?
They would log it, they could log in from their city-provided cell phone.
Okay.
And development of these procedures and rules are going to be developed as we move forward, but there are ways to address the questions you're having. You're just kind of a little bit into the details at this point as far as how it's going to execute officially.
Sure, those mechanics we would be curious.
Well, welcome to the new world. Right? I mean,
There's
we're a little behind the times
Yeah.
in the real world.
And there's a lot of policy behind this that the council will have to give direction on of what they would like to see. But we're obviously not going down that path until we decide if this is the right step.
Well, and a lot of that's got to come from the department heads,
Yes.
I think. I mean, I understand on the one end how great it is. I get that. But there's still the other.
There's always cons.
Yeah, so.
We are going to implement in baby steps. We will start probably with finance and IT, just for a payroll period, and then we'll move it out probably department by department.
Well, the key thing is we don't want to, we have a tight window to process payroll, so we want to make sure that we're fluent before we fully adopt.
Before we fly, huh?
Because the last thing we ever want to do in this city is to stall payroll. We want it to roll out appropriately, okay?
Always a good idea to crawl, walk around.
Yeah, on this particular one, this is kind of an important one that you want to make sure you're in success before you even roll out.
It'll be most likely a 6 to 9 month rollout.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mr. Johnson, what are the, with other entities that you've helped through this process, transitioning from a system like what we're doing to this, like what are some of the hiccups that have been encountered? I mean, do you have people forgetting to clock out, and so then they're just running up, or I mean, anything like that we need to be aware of?
Well, if they forget to clock in or clock out, it's going to show up on the system. You're going to know that happened. You can make the adjustment accordingly. So there will be a learning curve, some change management, and our implementation team kind of helps through that change management process with you so that you don't end up with angry employees or employees not getting paid, obviously. There's reports that we can run that'll show if someone hasn't logged their time for some reason. So we kind of have some safety guards in place to prevent it from...
It identifies things that are not normal, I would assume.
Exactly.
I was on the team at ISU, and ISU implemented their new computer system, and I did a lot of the training that went out to employees for the new electronic timekeeping system. Because they had time cards with your social security number written on them still. So we're a little ahead of the game. But so I've been through that whole process, and I've seen a lot of the hiccups that you get. Yes, there are going to be bumps in the road. We did have time clocks that I issued for a lot of our outlying facilities, and then like any of the construction crews that I issued, they were all on time clocks. Everyone else did system login. But the majority of the people at ISU actually sat at a desk. So this is a little different because we are more time clock heavy, but there is a big learning curve for employees, but after that original learning curve, it calms down pretty fast.
So the question here is this the direction we still want to head?
Can I ask another question?
You sure can.
Okay, I'm just looking back at this return on investment page. So help me understand on the $15,800 for payroll processing savings. I'm tracking with everything you've got there, but it's not like we're going to, even though it saves their time, it's not like we're not going to have the staff. So we'll still, so it's really not a money savings, but it's a time savings more,
It's
right?
probably an efficiency savings.
Okay.
If that person isn't having to do entry that takes, well, let's say on police side, it takes that person a good portion of her Monday to get through it and then to review it, okay? If she's not having to spend a full day just doing entry and then doing review, her time is going to be able to be utilized for other purposes within the police department. So the possibility that you're going to need more people down the road is going to get diminished because you've now utilized that person more efficiently. So it's not, don't think of it in terms of money in the bank. Think of it in terms of cost savings of what that person's doing for a job.
Yeah. So along with that, I guess if I say, okay, I can't count that as money in the bank and I can't count the 270, it looks like there's a blue line missing that would be another about 50,000. That's this top little section for hours lost per day. So even with that 50,000 plus the 13 in paper savings, is it safe to say you guys think the initial cost basically pays itself back in 2 years, even if I don't look at those first two, or not really?
I think it will when you start getting back into the accuracy of your reporting and the efficiency of your time of people. Maybe at some point you determine that you need one less person because now that person is able to take on more tasks. It depends on, as a city, what services you're going to provide and how much you're going to do more. You know, usually we're always asked to do more instead of do less, and so it comes down to those kind of thoughts. So I'm not taking away from the fact that you're not going to have savings from this action. It's just, it's hard to put it in money in the bank kind of savings, okay? It's a different way of looking at it. I call it more cost efficiency savings and how you're using your people. That's just as important as putting the money in the bank, because now I can use those people for these other things that I consider to be equally important. And I consider the review to be the bigger driver than the entry side. And so that would be the thing I would be focusing on here.
Okay, thanks.
So if this is a 6 to 9 month implementation, then the efficiencies are going to be phased in at 6 to 9 months as well.
that'd be right.
So to say that the return on investment in the first year, it's not even going to come close to this. But we're setting it up to be coming in second and third.
Well, it's the first year of full implementation.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Jim, you want to keep heading in this direction?
I think it's very wise and prudent on our part to pursue it.
We don't have the budget.
Mike? Okay. Gary?
Well, I'm okay, but we need to have a discussion about where it's going to fit into the budget. We didn't budget for it, I'm assuming.
Actually, council, we have budget for the major piece of it.
Meaning?
I have the funds for the implementation piece. I did not have the funds for the time clocks. Joyce can address where we're going to find the funding for the time clocks.
We did include that in this budget, didn't we?
Yes.
Because that was our intention.
And this is what I'm going to give to you right now. So you can see where we would take the monies from and who would have to pay for it per fund.
Thank you very much.
The majority of the money coming from IT for the implementation, our reserves have, through expeditious management of our funds over the last several years, our reserves have grown, and we can cover this.
This is the time clock purchase.
With our reserves.
Okay.
Reserves that have been approved for this purchase in the existing budget.
So when you look at that capital contingency, excluding the general fund one, but all the other tax funds, I remember when we initially set the budget, we set it with fire leaving our insurance plan. And so when they didn't, it created some savings, and what we did with those excess dollars is we just threw it into a capital contingency with each of those funds. So part of the general fund, that capital contingency went up. We initially booked for a certain amount, and then some of it went up because of the savings from fire department staying with our insurance group. So that's where these dollars are coming from when I talk about the reserves. That is strictly from that portion. So you have budget authority right now for those portions. I also included in there, because you always have the option of the emergency repair of the building renovation. This could be slightly connected, especially in the general fund for the building renovation, so you could utilize those dollars if you needed to, because you're talking about the hardware for your building for the time clock entry system. But as you can see, all of them can cover effectively the cost of their time clocks within each of these areas.
Okay, so concerns addressed? Yes.
Okay, so my question was, sorry, Mr. Johnson, you might not like me to ask this, plug your ears. I'm just going to ask staff, like, what, help us understand why this ExecuTime system is better than other options for time clocks or things that are out there.
Namely because ExecuTime is a preferred partner with SunGuard. If we're going to have something that integrates with the SunGuard system, which is critical, it wouldn't work if it didn't integrate.
Okay.
SunGuard says, when you ask SunGuard who, they say ExecuTime.
Okay.
They don't have any others that they have this relationship with,
okay,
which is interesting, and maybe you all ought to plug your ears. ExecuTime was bought out by Tyler Technologies a year or two ago. Tyler
6 months ago.
6 months ago. Tyler is the #1 competitor for SunGuard. Yet, when they made this, they were purchased by Tyler, the CEOs from both organizations met together and confirmed that they would continue this partnership relationship, even though they're owned by separate entities.
okay. That's just helpful for me to know. Sorry to ask. Thanks, though.
All right, thank you.
No,
very
it's a
much.
good question, because essentially we're doing sole source, and because of this price, we kind of have to explain why we're going to sole source.
Great. Thank you very much for your work. Appreciate that.
We will have this before you next week at the general council session for the approval. We have all the paperwork ready for your approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Put me in, I'd like to talk about it more category. Put me in the I'd like to talk about it more category.
Okay, absolutely. Well, we have a little bit of time to do that. I'm glad I figured this out, because that just went
Well, I've got the record. I've got to get 5 fires.
They're all hiding in the back.
There's just one that I know for a fact.
They got 5 fire stations. Well, the county already got one guy.
Doesn't matter.
Well, but he can log
Doesn't
it.
matter. He's still an hourly employee. He still needs, I mean.
They can set him up to log it.
Well, I suppose you could do that.
Well, okay, we are moving on to agenda item number 4, proposed
You're right.
changes
I mean,
to Personnel Policy Handbook. City staff will be available to review proposed changes to the city's Personnel Policy Handbook. The proposed changes are: 1, new social media policy; 2, change to the city's tobacco use policy; 3, change to vacation payouts over established city cap; 4, new bereavement leave policy; 5, additional language being added to the sick leave policy to help avoid abuse; 6, a change in what time can be donated to those who request; 7, new organ and bone marrow leave policy; 8, clarification on travel funds; and 9, clarifications around promotions, lateral shifts, transfers, demotions, and reclassifications.
I could have added a few more things in there if you want. So I'm Heather Buchanan. I'm the HR director, and I'm here to talk to you about some policy changes that are being proposed to council for your adoption or for some to the scrap bin. So when I took this job, I was approached by both the mayor and members of council to bring some new views on some of the policies that we have, do a review. Some of these policies were written before I took the position. They just haven't been adopted into the handbook. So some of these policies, like Nicole and Chris wrote the social media policy, so if we have questions, they'll have to answer those. So the first thing that big adjustment we did was to our personal appearance policy. We took out the language that listed items that you can't wear to work, and we just went with proper business attire. It's just a wording change. The dress code has remained the same, and it is up to the departments to enforce that. Any questions on that one? That one's pretty easy.
What's a camisole?
Like a tank top, like a skinny strap tank top.
I don't know.
Okay.
I just
No offense, but good.
Under your tie?
If you do, please don't tell us.
some of those things I just.
I know, that's why we just narrowed it down to proper business attire. The next one would be our social media policy. This was written with the help of IT, so if we have any questions around that, I'm going to have to bring Nicole and Chris up to help me answer those.
That's fine.
Basically, it limits one, you're probably wondering, why are we dealing with social media at work? Well, because a lot of departments have pages that they do maintain. Street, sanitation, WPC, parks, a lot of these groups, that's how they get information out. It's low cost, it's like no cost. And it's easily done from your phone or your work computer. We do use it in HR with applicants. So if we have applicants and managers ask us questions, hey, could you see if there's any background on this? We do actually go onto their Facebook accounts that aren't private and pull them up. So those are the reasons that it's used. Yes, employees do use it during working hours. I know that is a limitation Chris would like to look at in upcoming handbooks. Right now, it isn't something I was ready to bring before council to address.
Well, as in relationship to job applicants, you get a real sense of who they are.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So this is a new policy. It's a change in our tobacco use policy. Right now, we cover it in vehicles, like no smoking in vehicles. We've expanded that policy to include vaping and chewing tobacco, so they would be prohibited on city property or in city vehicles.
When someone violates this policy, what are the repercussions?
If an employee is caught smoking in a vehicle, they should be written up. Inside a building, that is a violation of Idaho's Clean Air Act. I don't know, can they get a ticket for that? But it is a violation of the smoking. They can be written up, and they should be written up by their department head for it.
Okay, and so this would include vaping as well?
Vaping, yes.
There was a city pickup going down the street the other day with smoke going out it, and I just was really irritated.
One of our officers actually owns a vape shop in town, so I brought him in so I could ask him questions because I don't know a whole lot about vaping. There is tobacco-free vaping, but it's the perception. That person driving down the road, it could have been tobacco-free, but the perception to the public is someone is driving a city vehicle smoking.
Well, we don't want it blowing up in their pocket like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, and we do have a very good wellness program. We offer tobacco cessation classes for employees to quit. Those are available, so if we go to a tobacco-free environment, we already have steps in place to help employees with that. I actually adopted this policy from the city of Boise's. Theirs was a little more comprehensive because it's also banned in parks. I obviously took that piece out because Pokey, as far as I know, has no intention of going smoke-free in public places at the time. So the vacation ones, which is probably why most people are in the room today. The first thing is there's a wording change at the introduction of the policy. Just put some clarification in there for what vacation can be used for. The other piece was, it's just a good practice. When an employee has vacation request denied, that should be in writing. The only time that would not be done is if you use a bid system that you have a calendar and you sign in on a spot and that's how it's granted. If there's no spots available, then there is no denial because there is nothing available for them to request.
For example, hunting season.
Yes, so like if you pull up hunting season and there's no places for you to sign up, then that means it's denied because there's none available. Otherwise, your department head would return in writing saying, I'm sorry, this has been denied due to lack of availability within the department.
So if they get sick that day?
I have that covered in sick leave. So use of sick leave on a day that vacation, Kelly, or comp time has been denied is a violation of will hopefully be a violation of our policy, and the employee can be written up for that.
Run that one by me again?
So he asked, what happens if you call in sick on a day that your vacation was denied off? Under the sick leave adjustments in the wording I've done, that is now reason for an employee to be written up. Disciplinary action can be taken.
So you're not allowing employees to be sick when they're on vacation? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, we've never allowed sick leave use during a scheduled vacation without a doctor's note. If you ask for a vacation day and it's denied because the department doesn't have the availability to grant it, and then suddenly you call in sick on that same day, it's a little suspicious and it looks like abuse of the policy. So unless you're bringing like a doctor's note in, you're probably going to be written up for violation.
I get you.
Okay, so see my big nice yellow font? This was the cap on vacation payouts that I was bringing before council. Legal has asked for a little bit more time to review this one because it is a major policy shift. So at this time, I'm not asking for this to be adopted into this handbook.
Appreciate the further review.
Yes. This is another change. Right, a couple years ago, we moved admin leave for exempt employees to be used in 4-hour increments. I'm asking the same be done with vacation leave. So if an exempt employee wants to take a half day, they are eligible to use 4 hours of their vacation. Right now, they can only use the vacation in 8-hour increments. So if an employee, say, shows up for 15 minutes and then goes home, they could not put down any time because they've worked time in that day and they can only use 8-hour increments. In this case, the employee could come in, work the morning, say I'm taking the afternoon off with approval, and then they could use a 4-hour block of their time. It enables exempt employees to have a better use of their vacation leave, so at the end of the year you don't have a bunch of exempt employees saying, hey, I need to take like every Friday off because I haven't been able to use this time throughout the year. It does put us in sync with our vacation and admin leave policies. This is a new policy that I'm recommending. Currently, our bereavement leave is 40 hours of sick leave used for an immediate family member. The defined list is on the screen. I would like to expand this. I just call this being a good person policy. A spouse or a common law spouse with the declaration made before July 1st, 95, the employee will receive 30 working days paid that do not touch their accruals. It's not FMLA, it's not sick leave, it's not vacation. It is 30 paid days that the city is giving that employee to use within 6 months of the death of their spouse to deal with all of the things that come with that. The second part of that is for a minor child or a stepchild under the age of 18. In the case of an employee's child's death, they will receive 10 working days paid bereavement immediately following the death of the child. Once again, it will not touch their accruals. And then other immediate family members, as defined in my paragraph C there, they would use sick leave as the old bereavement policy allowed, up to 40 hours. I know this is a big policy change, but there's not a lot we can do for employees in those situations. We can make it a little bit easier at work. We already have them budgeted in for those hours they're going to be working. I can't think of a department that would say, no, we're not going to help this person out. So they would willingly step in and cover that, any sort of overages that would happen. Any questions on this one?
So you start out here with current policy.
That's our current bereavement leave policy.
Okay, and then ABC is it expanded?
No, that's what the policy would then be. A and B are the new pieces. C is the same. It just takes out the spouse and the child. When an employee loses a spouse, say, we actually recently had this happen and the department approached me. They wanted me to do an exception to the policy so that they could donate leave to this employee without requiring them to ask for it under our FMLA, and that they wouldn't have to use their accruals. I couldn't make that exception because I don't set policy for the city. The council does. So this is my way of helping us give back to employees when they're in a tough situation.
Heather, in arriving at some of these, recognizing you're brilliant, but did you have a sounding board with department heads or employees to come up with some of these?
I did. I talked a lot with my department. I worked a lot in conjunction with finance because of the finance aspect of adjusting a leave. We would actually have to have a new leave code in the payroll system. I bounced it off a lot of employees. My mom is the city clerk in American Falls, and they hadn't had an employee lose a spouse in the 30 years she'd been there. And in like the last 3 years, they've had 2 employees lose a spouse. And this is the policy they went to. I did some research around the country. The U.S. is shockingly behind on bereavement leave. It's almost as bad as maternity leave. I've worked a lot with European countries in some previous jobs, and their bereavement leave is much similar to this. They give 30 days to the employees. That's paid working days. You might say, well, firefighters, they only work like 12 days a month because they're on 24-hour shifts. It doesn't matter because it's the days that they're required to be there. It's not the hours and the day that they're working. They need that time with their families. They need that time to deal with the legal implications. If you ask someone to use their entire leave balance, after 6 months, they're not done grieving. That's just the amount of time that we're giving them to use this. What we're handing them it's not a gift, it's just being a decent person.
As you've researched that, is 30 days common,
It
or
seemed
is
to be
it
the
15 in other places?
It seemed to be the
is-
standard that I ran across the most. Oregon is a little bit more progressive in their bereavement leave. 30 days, we sat down and we decided, well, that's about 7 working weeks. So it's kind of the route. We just kind of bounced around different ideas. 15 seemed a little short. That's only 3 weeks. If you lose a spouse, just the legal implications alone are huge. So we gave them 6 months to use that time. It didn't have to be right in a row like it does with a child. It would be the 10 working days. We can...
I can't imagine having to try to figure out all the financial and taking care of my kids that my spouse does.
Yeah. 30 days, we decided a month was an easy number to go with. If the council would like to entertain different numbers, we would be happy to calculate those and figure out if they would work.
As I look at this, I look at a situation like yours with your daughter. Are we meeting needs like that? Because that was really tough with all the responsibility you had in terms of transplant.
I don't know quite how to answer that because I had an employer at the time that was very flexible with me. And that was up to that immediate supervisor to make those decisions. But if there was a hard and fast rule of, no, you don't have any extra time, then you don't have any extra time. You have to choose between staying home or keeping your job.
Yeah, we can discuss whether we're progressive or behind the rest of, I guess, for many of the business world, this is rather generous.
It is very generous.
Because compounds with, you got 3 days.
Yeah, 40 hours.
Whether it was your, and that was just to get through the funeral situation. So.
And we're looking at a situation with benefits cost ever increasing. We have to be realistic. What we offer as a benefits package will have to change in upcoming years. These are policies we can put into place that have a contained cost. We know it's not going to cost any more than we already have budgeted, but it's something we can grant to employees in good faith to help them in tough situations.
And so American Falls, in 30 years, your mom's aware of 2 situations where this came up.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not like we're talking about this.
This isn't like a monthly happening.
Yeah, we're talking about this as being a catastrophic occurrence.
It's rare. People do lose spouses and children while employed, but you're talking maybe 1 a year. Like
maybe.
Maybe.
Now, one of the situations that is presented in here is that a person can give sick leave to other people? No.
That's actually something I'm asking the council to remove from our donated time policy. That's in an upcoming slide.
Okay. See, I read ahead.
Oh, see, I'm good. I'm glad. Because I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you.
You're just mixing it together.
I know there's a lot of intermingling of our policies because of the types of vacation and sick leave.
And this is a matter of just cleaning it up and making it.
This is completely new. It's completely up to the council. These are just adjustments that I think would be beneficial to our employees.
I'm fine with it. A few years ago, we doubled the life insurance that the city provided because we just couldn't see it covering costs, and there's a downside to the city having to process with somebody all of that stuff, and so it's sometimes you pay it forward by doing this.
Are we okay to move on from this one?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the wording and the change of sick leave. There is not rampant abuse of sick leave within the city, but there is some abuse by employees. I've tried to add a little more language here to help managers manage their employees in situations where they feel that there's abuse happening. So sick leave shall not be used in lieu of vacation, comp time, or leave without pay. Abuse of sick leave or taking sick leave under false pretenses is a violation of this regulation and subject to discipline up to and including termination. Potential indicators of abuse include, but are not limited to, frequent or regular sick leave absences, having little, if any, sick leave accrued compared to the employee's time with the city, and patterns of use. So if an employee is somehow sick every Monday, it's probably an abuse of sick leave, unless you have a doctor's note saying that this employee suffers from something then defined that they like need a 3-day weekend. I would like to find that doctor so that I can sign up for that plan. But it just gives managers a better ability to address sick leave abuse that they see within their departments.
Heather, is there, I look at vacation and specifically sick. I just am sick of going to work. I want to go skiing, and so I call in sick.
Yeah.
Does that make the manager, I mean, how do we know? We're not going to go up to Pebble and check.
No.
So would there be a benefit to dropping sick and vacation time and going with personal days so that we don't have to maybe be a little more babysitters?
So I have been approached by both the mayor and members of the council about moving the city to PTO, which is paid time off. I'm not a fan. Okay. This is my effort to keep us with a sick leave and a vacation balance. I understand the points of going to PTO. It is a lot easier to administer. However, I feel it's more of a detriment to employees. I like employees having sick leave for those emergency situations. That's why we allow them to build a bank. The same with sick leave. We have an incredibly generous cap. 400 hours is a lot to have on the books, and then we even allow over-accrual for that for a year. I'm trying to figure out how to constrain the costs of those without harming the employees to avoid going on a PTO program.
Well,
can you look back at sick leave over the last 10 years in the city and see what those caps have been? I mean, I would assume you go back in time and say, out of all of our employees for the last 10 years, we've had X number of employees hit this kind of cap.
There is no cap on sick leave. We can do it with vacation.
Well, I'm saying as far as use.
Yes, we can look at use.
I mean, if you got 400 hours of sick leave in the last 10 years, the largest amount's been used is 100 hours. That would tell us something.
Each year in the CAFR, I have to produce a schedule called uncompensated absences. One of the things I look at is both vacation and sick leave. And one of the things that you look at is how much did you accrue, how much do you have in the bank, and how much did you use? And of course, all this is connected to when you were hired. So do I see trends like she's discussing? Yes. You'll see people that have been here 20 years and they have nothing in the bank and no known major illness that could have occurred during that time. So yeah, they're earning it, they're using it, and it's gone. Now, is it legitimate? I can't make that call, but there is suspicious activity that they could be overusing it, shall we say, because we're generous in that part to ensure that if something major happens to you, that you have a way to cover yourself, right? And so, yes. And then usually, a lot of times, those can end up becoming the people that are using your donated time. Mm-hmm. And so then you see it being extended. So yes, I think there's an issue there.
I think a lot of people are sicker than other people. I've been pretty fortunate in my life. I'm rarely sick, but I know people that are legitimately sick a lot. Mm-hmm. I worked with people that were like that too, so I can see that. And as far as the donated time thing goes, if you're an abuser and you continue to use up all your sick leave and something happens, then probably your fellow employees aren't going to donate any to you.
We see those trends too.
Well, that's their choice, I think.
It is.
With the PTO versus the sick leave and vacation time, would you consider having the vacation and sick more of a psychological management tool for the individual, or?
I feel like PTO almost punishes an employee. Like if you're sick, that if you're an unhealthy person or you've had a bad flu season, I mean, you could, by the time summer rolls around, you could have 0 hours available to you.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep beating that horse. I just want to, because I've been kind of an advocate for PTO, but I want to know if I'm right or not.
Right now, I'm trying to give managers, and we're rolling out training in HR, how to do documentation, those sort of things. We're helping managers learn how to manage employees that are abusing the system so that we can correct that behavior or move on from that employee.
And do you think they don't do that now?
Well, they do, but we're just giving them better tools to do it.
If you are abusing sick leave now, you're not subject to any...
You are. It's just managers aren't sure how to address that. I mean, there's so many ramifications around addressing someone's health. It's not like we can require a doctor's note for every visit. Those are things we have to work through with our legal department. If we were to consider a PTO program, we'd have to do a payout of the system or some sort of conversion. But anytime you're addressing someone and requiring a doctor's note, there's a lot more regulation around it than, say, like a school where the teacher requires a sick note from the parent. I mean, I don't go to the doctor when I have a head cold. I might not be able to get up, but I don't go to the doctor. So by forcing that employee to go to the doctor and get the note, we then drive up our health care costs.
This is one of the arguments for digital timekeeping, because if you remember some of our past conversations, there hasn't been a lot of time for training because of the paperwork and the administrative work that has had to go on. By making HR processes more efficient, that frees up time to do some more of this training and make all of our managers and employees better at what they do, I think. Yes?
I agree.
All right. Okay, thank you.
I did add a piece to the use of sick leave, which is adding in the employee's ability to use their EAP appointments to use sick leave to do that during work hours. We offer the program. We should offer the employee time during the day to take those appointments if necessary.
So what are they doing now?
It's not actually covered in the policy.
Okay.
And then constraints around sick leave, this is where I added some language. We talked about calling in sick on a day that a vacation has been denied. I listed some reasons that management could have concerns an employee could be written up. Chronic use of sick leave at the beginning or ending days of an employee's shift. We went with shift because some departments are on different shifts than a Monday through Friday. Taking late sick leave on a vacation day, comp time day, admin day, or Kelly day has been denied. Using sick leave on deadline dates, and then pattern usage of sick leave at the end or beginning of vacation time.
What's a deadline date?
So if you have a presentation to council and you're worried that they're going to put you in the hot seat and call in sick on a Thursday morning.
I think that should be legitimate.
my mental health would agree, but for practice, it's not.
What if I'm really sick?
If you're really sick, I think the manager, you're going to call your manager, you're not going to send in an email. That's something we would work with. If I'm sick every Thursday morning that I have to meet with you guys, I think we have an issue, and it's a pattern usage.
Okay. Thanks.
I need to get one.
So do you think, I guess, a lot of this stuff's arbitrary to me. Mm-hmm. Do you think we have a lot of issues with this now?
I believe we have a small percentage of the employee population of using sick leave. For the whole, employees are honestly using their sick leave. But I know employees that they know exactly when they hit 8 hours of sick leave and they are sick the next pay period.
So in essence, what this is doing is just giving good people more reinforcement to be good people. I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
Firm up a policy and morale is a little bit more even.
Well, it's really hard when the person next to you who you're working on a project with is, sick every Monday because I don't know what they do over the weekend, but they're suddenly sick every Monday. So their work lands on the employee next to them. It's inefficient. It's bad for morale.
But have you ever seen an employee request help from other employees to donate some sick leave, not get it?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen employees lose vacation time at the end of the year rather than donate it.
Okay. It's good to know.
So this is one more change to sick leave. This is the donation policy. Currently, employees may donate accrued vacation, comp time, or sick leave to an employee who has exhausted all time due to a serious illness. I'm asking that we remove the ability to donate sick leave. I think it should be vacation time or comp time, which have a dollar amount associated with the employee. That's time off that they will get paid out for if they leave the city other than retirement. So if I'm going out and I have a major medical, let's say I have cancer, employees can donate comp time or vacation time to me, but not their sick leave. This is just another way I'm trying to control employees that have zero sick leave balances, and then suddenly they have a major medical and then they're asking for time.
So at present time, what's the maximum sick leave accrual?
There is no maximum sick leave accrual.
Okay, so if I don't use it, I can accrue,
Yes. Over 30 years, you would accrue a massive amount. I don't know what the highest we've ever seen is.
I think the highest one I've seen in a payoff is around 2,900.
okay, so it's a payoff.
At retirement, only if you retire from the city.
Right, but 2,900 hours?
Yes.
That's paid at percentages.
To give you an example, I've been with the city 15 years, and I think mine right now is about 1,500.
And the payout is 100% of those hours, or 50% of those hours?
It's calculation on sick leave. Let's say I was at retirement and I had 1,300 hours. The first 400 is paid out at 20%. The next 400 is paid out at 30%. The remaining hours are paid out at 40%.
So it's about 30%.
Okay.
Right in there. Yeah.
Okay.
We're gaining because of that.
But you have to hit per-se retirement in order to be eligible for that.
Okay.
Well, that would be what, 5 years, 10 years?
You have to have, well, there's two things.
Or
You have
are
to
you
be-
talking about the age person?
It's both an age and years of service. In other words, if I just started with the city and I'm 55 and I go to retire at 57, I wouldn't have anything.
Right.
Because I'm not per-se.
Well, but you're not going to have
vested.
1,500.
No.
You have to have 5 years with per-se, and then if you're a general employee, it's 55 years of age. If you're a public safety individual, then you would be 50 years of age.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
The next new policy is an organ and bone marrow donation policy. 5 working days for bone marrow donor or 30 working days for organ donation. I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot of questions on this one.
Is this the current or is this new?
This would be an entirely new policy in our handbook.
Okay.
Okay.
That's organ donation when you're still alive.
Well,
Well, we hope you're not showing up to work otherwise.
If it's not, then if it's not when you're still alive, then sick leave comes into play.
yes, right. But does the city have short-term disability?
We currently do not offer a short-term disability policy.
I guess, is there the possibility to look
We're looking at a short-term
at what
disability policy.
that would, and
Yep.
employees can participate in that? Because I think it's worth,
Oh, I agree, and we're
It
doing
is,
the
and
research
and the
on that.
premiums on those are not.
well, I know, but
Right.
it's insurance. And again, there's a difference between insurance and thinking you're bulletproof.
There is.
You're paying against that small odd that something.
It's on our list to look at.
Okay.
Since I started in August, we've survived the Aetna implementation. We haven't had time to do a lot of
I
research.
understand that.
But it definitely is on our list because I would like to see it as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is actually, Nicole brought this to my attention that it needed to be added to the handbook. If an employee goes out on FMLA and they have no leave available and they're not getting donations, they technically can be dropped from the city's insurance plan for lack of payment. We needed that clarification in the handbook. It's in our insurance wording, but it is not in the handbook, which is easily accessible to employees. This is just a clarification around travel funds for official business. It is in our travel policy. Once again, we just put it into the handbook so employees would have an easier time accessing it, but it is a major change to what was written in there. So in all of our budget restructuring meetings, we've been talking about combining departments or maybe potential layoffs, that sort of thing. If those are things the city needs to look at in the future, combining or restructuring, we need better policies around promotions, lateral shifts, transfers, and demotions. I went ahead and I added language for your review to see if you'd like to put it into the handbook in case we need to get into those types of situations. This would give us clearly defined areas that we could look at, so we would have things in place to deal with those situations. It puts time frames. If we demote a person because of lack of performance, they can't transfer out of that position for a year. Things like that. Transfers, they can only bid for another job during their 6-month window if it's a promotion. There's just a lot of language that needed cleaned up in there and added to explain those differences to employees. Number 5, overtime and comp time. I added in a paragraph that management reserves the right to limit overtime based on the needs of the department, overall well-being of employees, in cases of high workers' comp claims, and in cases of, and for budgetary purposes. In cases of. That's a typo. But this gives us a way, so if you have an employee that has chronic high workers' comp claims, but they're constantly getting overtime, it gives us a way to limit that for the well-being of the employee and to control the costs of our workers' comp program.
So this isn't a punishment, this is a control.
Yes. Longevity pay, this piece needed added in because the police union employees did give up their longevity. It was rolled into their base salary. I needed that clarification in the handbook that they no longer are receiving longevity pay. This is more language around promotions, shifts, and transfers. It just gives a clear definition of what each item is. It also talks about an introductory period, which used to be called a probationary period, but introductory is now the popular term to use, so that change has been made in the handbook.
Introductory.
Yes, introductory period. This defines a demotion. They are rare. We do have, once in a while, have a voluntary one from the fire department, so I decided it needed added it into the handbook in case other employees start looking at this route. If you're in a management position and you'd like to step back into a non-leadership role for your last 5 years of work, we needed a process in place for employees to do that. More on transfers. I added a religious accommodation piece into the handbook. No, it's a very vague policy. How do you define it? I don't know until I actually see a case where it is brought forward where someone is asking for a religious accommodation. However, we don't address it in the handbook at all, and it needs to be done. And then under general rules, so we obviously can't control who carries a firearm into City Hall anymore, but I can say illegal possession or non-emergency discharge of a firearm is grounds for disciplinary actions for an employee. So that's why item number J was put in, to try to put some sort of control in place with that. Then number 19, it is tied to the tobacco use. It needs to be written in the general rules. So if we decide to adopt that policy, it needs to be added here. And then this is the retirement payout difference. That's postponed for now.
When was the last time we had major changes to the handbook?
Well, so I handed Kirk this massive pamphlet of paper, and he says he hadn't fully reviewed the handbook since 2011.
Okay.
So it's a tad overdue.
5 years.
I'm impressed with your knowledge.
Well, I haven't worked for the city that long, but I do have a strong HR background, and I've worked multiple places, so I've seen a lot of different policies. I tried to pull pieces that I thought we could implement either in good faith or as a way to build morale without punishing any employees. Yes, there are controls going in place, but it is in no way attack against employees or like their practices. It's against a few employees that are using the system.
And making it fair for everybody else. Okay.
So now that this is out and everybody can see that, be an opportunity for department heads and employees to...
Department heads are aware of the changes.
Okay.
I presented to them in general council meeting, I think in November.
Okay.
The handbook in its entirety has been posted on the intranet for employees to access.
But being aware of changes and...
Yes.
having comments
I've talked,
things
well,
in
by the
it's a
time
different
I
story.
left here after general staff meeting and I made it to my office, I had like 4 employees in there waiting for me.
Okay.
It's amazing how fast that traveled. I've talked to a lot of different department heads. I've gathered emails for them. The biggest concerns that we've heard so far was the cap around capping payouts at 400. But like I said, we need more time for our legal department to review that because that is a major policy change. So that isn't being presented in this iteration of the handbook.
Okay. It's a good opportunity for people, if they have concerns, to get those to us, so maybe something we
Sooner rather than after.
And here's where the issue that, and we've had these discussions before, because many companies out there have adopted policies with leave that you use it or lose it after a number of time, and much lower reserve numbers, I guess. Because with this, it becomes a huge account payable for the city and for finance to track, and so how do you budget? The difficulty is how do you budget when you're going to have that, and we've had some of those discussions this year with our budget process. So that's the rationale, or some of the thought behind this, is it becomes a huge cloud out there that you don't know when it's going to rain, and so we just need to make sure that we're keeping our eyes on this.
I'm a strong advocate of the cap on the vacation payouts, not just for the financial side, but because employees need to be taking that time away from work. If you've been at work for 12 solid months, you are grumpy by December. No one wants to work with you. You're just grumpy to be around. People need that time away for their mental well-being. They need vacation days. They need to take that time away so they're not burnt out at work.
Yeah.
It's beyond just a payout issue. It's morale, it's performance.
And it's a health issue.
It is. Employees feel like I'm trying to take it away from them, and I'm not. I'm capping the payout at 400 and asking them to take that other time as actual leave.
So the real question is, Chris, when are you going to take vacation time? No, I'm just...
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out, because I'm grumpy every day.
You may not have enough vacation available.
There you go. One thing, we did a couple of things in the budget cycle different this past year at 417. One, we do holdbacks on those retirement payouts. If a retirement doesn't occur, we move those monies into our 952 account, which is the savings account for these payoffs, to help so that we won't budget more than once for a given item, and those dollars are only used for the payoffs. I think in the long run, that's going to facilitate a better budget over time. But yes, these payoffs are huge. Every time we look at them, and we do in payroll processing, it's an issue, and it's a budget issue, and I look at it also through uncompensated absences. And you put a cap on your vacation, and in the vacation, we're not trying to take anything away from people. We're just saying, use your vacation as we've asked you to use it appropriately. Don't try to make it a bank in the last year to increase your payoff by 50% because you've not taken a day of vacation. That's just a huge cost to the city. And those dollars, in effect, could be used for other purposes, wage increases, benefits. It's how do you want to spend those dollars? And to me, that's a council decision.
Well, and as I've said before, an easy way to fix that, and we talked about this some years ago, is start putting it in effect with new employees, with new hires. That's an easy change.
Well, the problem with grandfathering this sort of policy, that means it would be potentially 30 years before you would see any return.
Well, then the council sitting here in 30 years wouldn't have to deal with it.
That is true.
I mean, I
hope we're not the council.
Well, you may be. I won't. I can assure you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We've been sitting here for 2 hours. We have one agenda item left.
Let's do it.
Plow through?
Yeah.
Okay.
My ankles are always...
All right. Agenda item number 5, city business license update. City staff will be present to discuss the results from a survey sent to a sample of businesses within city limits regarding the creation of a licensing process to operate a business in Pocatello.
Good morning. I'm Terry New, Assistant Planner. This is Glenn Powell, Fire Department Captain, and of course Dave Gates, Fire Chief. And now I need to find my presentation. Nope. I don't remember what I named it. Sorry.
Business
Oh, I forgot to
Oh.
get on there yesterday too.
Did you?
Yeah, I could sidetrack the meeting.
That one's
Yeah.
There we go. Yay. Okay. I would like to start with we've had a committee for about 2 years doing some work on this, and it consists of Ralph Daniels from the police department, me, Tiffany Olson from the legal department, Glenn Powell from the fire department, Janae Perman from the police department, Christy Rowe from water pollution control department, Tom Sanford from the fire department, and Kim Stouse from the fire department. And we all just kind of came together, and to give you a little background, we all came together to do some research on this. There are 3 or 4 departments that really feel that this would be beneficial, and so we thought maybe if we got together and just kind of put our heads together to see what we need to do. And so we came to you, I think about 1.5 years ago, and you asked us to go forward and do more research, and so we did that, and we came back last spring, and you still wanted some more information and to do a business survey. And so we sent out that business survey, this fall. And we sent it out to approximately 340 businesses, which is 10% of the known businesses we have in Pocatello. Known is the key word. Many of those were sent back to us because the addresses weren't correct. And so that tells me that we have a huge gap of information that we need to correct. But then we had about 100 business owners take the surveys. And the information was quite interesting. And one thing that we did do in our letter, we kind of tried to give pros and cons to the business license issue. And the pros to this is diminished business owner or diminished business turnover due to information not provided to them that would outline the requirements for new businesses. We see this quite often in my department where they get mad, didn't know they needed a sign permit, didn't know they needed a building permit. Alcohol license is a perfect example because it's a state code that the place that's going to sell liquor by the drink or even beer and wine by the drink can't be within, I think, 250 feet of a church, school, residential area. But they don't find out about that until it comes to us. And if they were to have this packet of information before they even put one word on their first application, then they wouldn't have to be scrambling at the
Or
last
invested
minute.
a bunch of money and then went,
Exactly.
oh, I don't have any more money to finish this.
Exactly, because on an alcohol license, you have a state license, then you have a county license, and then you get the city license. And we don't issue our city license until we have proof that you have those other 2 licenses. And so we are working a little bit better, I think, with the state on that issue so that they're not finding out at the 3rd step after they've outlaid several $100s that they're not going to be able to do this. So we are trying to close that gap a little bit. But it would really help those business owners to know the different things that they need in order to just open their door. And then we could also provide them information from the Small Business Development Center. Ann Swanson is here, and we met with her yesterday. And they're there basically to help a business achieve success. And that's what we want too. We don't want businesses opening their doors and 6 months or a year later closing because they didn't quite have it all prepared. And I think us partnering with them could really help them. They offer classes, they offer one-on-one consulting that would help businesses succeed, and we think that that would be a really good fit with the business licenses. It also would lend legitimacy to businesses for potential customers, stakeholders, and lending institutions, and hopefully reduce the fly-by-night businesses that don't pay sales tax, that set up on the street corner over the weekend and then are gone. They don't pay sales tax, and so we don't get any of that revenue from them, which is always a bonus, getting that revenue. And this would also allow the city to have an accurate database for potential economic development, which is good for citizens and businesses. It would give us that information, but then that information would also be available to businesses. If a business came in and said they want to open up a pawn shop, well, we have 10. This is just a figure I pulled out here. I don't know if we have 10. We have 10. Is an 11th one really going to be a good fit for Pocatello and for that potential business owner? Because are they going to make the amount of money that they want if they're competing with 10 other pawn shops? That type of thing. And it would also provide up-to-date key holder information for police and fire. If there's an open door and police need to get a hold of somebody that has a key that can go lock up, sometimes their information is not as current as we would like it to be. And so that would give them that information. It would also help the fire department with fire alarms and possible smoke situations, so that they're not having to bust down a $1,000 door just to put out a candle. It would give them that information to kind of help save them time, but also business owners some money, I believe. So jump in here if you have.
I'd like to just share a story that kind of started why I kind of approached the mayor several years ago about a potential business license. We had a gentleman he basically started a restaurant. He purchased an old gas station, went in there, started his restaurant. We didn't know he had done this at the time, but finally in our process of fire inspections, we got around to that store, and it turns out he didn't have a qualifying hood. He didn't have the proper exit requirements, and if we think about the ghost ship incident in Oakland, most of fire code is built on somebody's life. And so we go in, and this person had invested quite a bit of their life savings in the starting up of this business. Well, we just told them that you can't be open until you get, a $30,000 hood system, and you get the proper egress, which is you're gonna have to cut holes in walls, put in new doors, and for me, that it hurts my heart, because I felt like, my gosh, if we could have told you this ahead of time, maybe you would have looked for a different business or a bit different location. Maybe you would have understood. And it's just that they don't understand. They don't understand that that was a requirement ahead of time. Had they known that had been a requirement ahead of time, we could have helped them maybe find the right business or the right location, or a location that was, or at least they would have known. Because if they had just invested their entire life savings in this new project that they wanted to do, and now we're saying your doors can't be open. This is a life safety issue. You cannot continue to function. That's not, I don't think that's good. That's not a good platform from which to launch. And I feel we're really wanting to make sure that they have the foundation ahead of time to succeed, as opposed to, the buyer beware, you're at your own risk. So.
Okay. Do you want us to wait till the end for questions? Okay. So if they're a business owner that's starting a business and they don't do their due diligence to understand what the regulations are and what they need, how are they going to know that a license from the city is even required if they're not paying attention to some of the other things they should have been paying attention to? How are they just going to do it anyway without the license, and then we never would have had the chance to tell them anyway?
And that's one of the holes we have to close. It'd basically be in the same situation as this gentleman is, you opened your doors and you didn't follow the rules, so these are all your requirements. And so it would kind of be operating where we are now, where, and we could also work with like utility billing to let us know when businesses come in to sign up for service. Because they know, because it's a commercial account versus residential, things like that. And so we can kind of close up some of those gaps to let people know, okay, you need to have a license. And this is the packet of information that you need that will help you start your business. And so there are things that we can put in place to help prevent that, but I don't think we will completely prevent that.
Because if they're already signing up for utilities, they've obviously got a plan and they've leased a space or
Yeah.
they've done something, so but they're still finding out about it after the fact, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and part of our process, if we're able to go forward with this, will be definitely PR. Go out and meet with the Rotaries, the Civitans, all of these organizations, the Chamber, to basically let people know, this is happening and this is why. And we would really like to get people on board with it. We view it as a good thing, and I've talked to some business owners that view it as a good thing. But we just need to get the word out, basically, let people know that this is a requirement.
Can we not do PR and provide information to people without requiring a license?
Yes, we could.
I think it also, to some degree, also creates a more even playing field, because there are, another example that I would use is automotive body repair shops. If you're a legitimate business, we've inspected you, you have to have a spray booth. They're not cheap. You have to have that installed and in your system. And if Joe down the street is spraying out of his garage, which we can't stop illicit behavior, but if we put people on notice that, yeah, you have to have a business license, there's going to be somebody who's willing to try and spray without a spray booth, and they're going to undercut your profits because they're going to be able to underbid because they haven't had the investment that all other spray booth or auto body shops have had. Same thing with restaurants. I mean, if a restaurant is flying low on the radar, they're less likely to have the required safety precautions, fire suppression systems. And so because they didn't invest in that, they're probably able to ask for lower prices, but that's undercutting businesses that are legitimate and are meeting all those requirements.
Is it more common than not for cities to require a business license, or the other way around?
I've actually looked at several cities in Idaho, and I believe there's only about 6 that are requiring them. So general business licensing. Most cities require licensing for like taxi cabs, daycares, things like that require background checks. But for only about 6 that require the general license.
But the issue I see here is that when we talk about children, like with the daycare license, we want to protect that. Well, when you start talking about restaurants, you're talking about events, you're talking about grease traps, on and on. Look at just what happened in Oakland. There's a good example of, and again, you can't make it a perfect world, but we can start trying to protect those that are not willing to protect those they serve.
Right.
And so I think it's something we ought to consider. Now, I think there's when utility billing, when people I don't know what we do about it. Do we take it to the extent that somebody comes in and wants to put the utilities in a home in a business name so they can write it off for tax purposes and whatever? I don't know, but it starts allowing our public safety and our environmental people to be aware of and educate. And I think that's going to be a big part of it, to educate people why we're doing some of these things. Because no matter what you do, you're still going to have the fly-by-nighters. You're going to have, I can't tell you the number of cities I drive into, and you drive in, and here's a sign that says there's an ordinance here, and you must have a business license to sell goods. So something to consider.
You're absolutely correct in that we're not going to completely eliminate illicit behavior, the fly-by-nighters. But one example that I was given to the committee and we were talking about is, for instance, right now when you walk into a restaurant, you assume
that as from the customer standpoint, you assume that the place is safe to be in. You assume that the health department has inspected it and the food is safe and this sort of thing. Do you ever look for those certificates or anything? No. Those are assumptions that the general public makes. We kind of feel like, or I do anyway, part of our duty with code enforcement is to ensure that the building is safe, particularly assembly occupancies. But if we don't know that assembly occupancies are out there and that they're operating, and the ghost ship incident is a prime example of that, then it's really hard for us to go out and make sure that these places are safe so that the common person going into them has that reasonable degree of safety when they're in there. And that's part of what we want to provide for our community and those that visit it.
So how are you going to do that? How complicated and time-consuming is it going to be on the city end?
To inspect all those places?
No, to set the licensing program up. Who's going to run it?
It will be in planning.
Okay.
Aislinn, our admin assistant, has already stepped up and said that she will be the one to do it, at least initially. Send out the letters, get everything going. We've talked about dividing the city up in quadrants, so we don't have 3,500 applications that are due on October 31st and 3,500 people knocking down our door because they want their license. So just kind of so it's staggered throughout the year. I've talked to Bert Hulse. It's already set up in our Navaline system, and it wouldn't be much work at all for it to go live. It might increase the number of fire inspections, but I believe those need to be done anyway.
Right.
So from our standpoint, probably the first year will be more labor intensive just because there's a learning curve going on. But after that, I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for inspecting like grease traps in restaurants? Is that DEQ or is that the health department?
I believe so.
No, actually, grease traps come under our
Water pollution.
water pollution control do those.
And the only way right now, the only way they know that there's new businesses coming in is if they do have building permits and they have to review those, or else they drive around and find new businesses.
They do a lot of that.
And this would really help them to be more efficient, and because they won't have to. We would like to institute like a monthly report and just email it out to all the departments and say, these are the new businesses that came in for licenses this past month. If you have inspections, please go do inspections. Okay. Things like that. So.
Okay, so how did it turn out?
The survey.
Yeah.
Okay. We asked a series of questions just about their businesses so we could kind of get a feel. One was, how long has your business been operating in Pocatello? The vast majority is 10 or more years. So they're very well-established businesses. And how many employees? 1 to 5. So they're definitely small, super small businesses. Operating budget was kind of all over the board there. You know, anywhere between less than 100,000 to more than 250,000. And so I think with that kind of gave us a pretty good range of businesses. And then we also wanted to know if they plan on expanding their businesses in the next year. And most of them said no. So, and then one question we asked is, should nonprofit organizations be required to register their businesses? And this is, we were thinking, mainly because they had the same fire safety discharge issues that all the other businesses have. We need to make sure that they're safe for the public to go into. We need to make sure that they're not discharging illicit substances into our wastewater that could possibly affect our NIPD's permit with the state. So that was our premise behind that question. And most of them said yes, that they should. And then in talking with the committee about this, we feel that maybe because nonprofits, just the basis of their business, don't have a lot of income, that maybe we could give them a reduced rate on the license, just to kind of help them out a little bit. We don't want to gouge everybody. So, and we don't want to gouge profit-making businesses either, but I think...
Yeah, we don't want to gouge anybody at all.
But I think having a reduced rate for nonprofits would help them out tremendously. And then we wanted to know if they were in support of a business registration or license ordinance in Pocatello, and what dollar amount. And it's obvious, $50 or less. So, and we were looking at the $50 range.
I don't think you should do a reduced fee if it's $50 or less.
Well, and that's part of why we asked the questions we did about the businesses. How long have you been in business and that sort of thing? We kind of wanted to get a feel for how resilient they are. Is $50 going to unduly be burdensome to a lot of businesses? Is that going to be the tipping point that causes them to go out of business? And based on the results, we don't feel that that's going to be, I mean...
When the survey was sent out to, it was also on our website, but the letters were sent out a broad range, restaurants, offices, and also I noticed on the list that there were a few churches. So I think we hit a pretty good broad spectrum of businesses so that we could get some really good feedback from them. So,
I think it should be $24.
24, just like my home occupation is 26. Yeah, this was the fees that I found throughout the state of Idaho. Lewiston, theirs was kind of cumbersome. It was.
Well, that's Lewiston.
It was one of those things where I tried to figure it out, and it was like, okay, if I go in and this is the type of business I have, I couldn't figure it out, because if you had 1 to 5 employees, it was a certain amount. If you have 6 to 10, it was a certain amount. And so then it just kept going up from there. And then I think if you are selling alcohol, then you have other fees. If you're a daycare, you have other fees. If you're a taxi company, you have other fees. And then if your facility needs to be inspected, you have additional fees. And so it could cost several $100s to get a business license in Lewiston. So it was like, ooh, I don't want it to be that difficult. So, we just, 25 seems to be the going rate. We would like to have 50, because I think if we need to add any personnel, that would cover it. So, and we wouldn't be hitting the budget hard. And then we asked if they would support an online renewal and payment system, and kind of 50-50 there. We will have it available to them, so there's no doubt in my mind. It just makes it so much more easy for business owners.
Makes it easy and convenient for them, fast. The data's already put into the system, and it saves having us have to do data entry and that sort of thing, and potentially personnel costs for stuff like that. And as Terry mentioned, it's our understanding through the IT department, they've already got that set up and have the modules with the system that we have that will work with that. So there wouldn't be an outlay there.
The development of the license forms and stuff is not an issue. Going to the online payment, while we can do it, it'll take a little bit more effort and a little bit probably the expense to pull that. So,
okay.
So, and then we wanted to know if people thought that the license or registration was necessary, and most people said no. So
that number's lower than I thought it would be.
I was going to say that the response was not surprising to us. I mean, you ask almost anybody, do you want more regulation? Do you want that? They're going to tell you no. So it wasn't surprising to us, but we did kind of want to see where it fell in the grand scheme of things.
And now we're basically looking for guidance for what you want us to do. If you would like us to...
Well, it's convenient that the mayor's not here today.
You think?
Can I ask more questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So this is going to be an annual fee, not like a one-time fee when they first start up. So can you speak to, you've already kind of described what you perceive as the benefit to somebody who's starting up. You can let them know these are some requirements you need to be aware of, etc. What benefit are people going to get after their initial startup paying that every year?
We will have updated information. For me, the big thing is the key holder, because I'm a small business owner, and I got called one night because the key holder information at the police department was all wrong, and they were finally able to track down my husband, who was out of town, and I got the call at 10:30 at night that I had to go down. And if all of this was in place, the police department wouldn't have to have 3 officers standing there for half hour, 45 minutes while they try to track down somebody that can come lock the door. Things like that. So for me, just as a business owner, I think that's great. And also like they pointed on, the level playing field. You have a business here, and Joe Blow opens up shop over here. You have a license. You've done everything that you've needed to do to be open. He did not, but he's undercutting you, and you're losing business. And so it's kind of helping to level all of that out. Jump in here anytime.
You covered that one well. That's the one I was going to cover.
Okay.
I really think that's probably the...
Yes. Ann Swanson would like to address also.
Yeah, thank you.
If you could come up here a little closer to the mic, please. And tell us who you are and who you're with.
Yeah, sure. I'm Ann Swanson. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center in this region, so it includes all 7 counties in southeast Idaho. And I was in discussion with Chief Gates probably about a year ago starting with this, and one of the advantages to having a business license that I wanted to mention is data. One of the hardest parts of helping a new business is getting them accurate market analysis. And so to have the data that a licensing system would provide would be very valuable to our clients. So that's the one other, and I think to anybody who's starting a business, whether they see us or not. So that's the other advantage I wanted to bring up that didn't get discussed yet. And the second thing was I wanted to make sure I address the council about the Small Business Development Center offerings. So if this licensing program came to be, the Small Business Development Center can step in and at no cost provide the training to the community that would include information about the appropriate fire codes and sign codes. And so we'd be happy to roll that into our business startup class that we already have a curriculum ready for. So thanks for listening, and I just wanted to let you know that we support it and we have resources to offer in terms of educating. Thanks.
Okay. Well, and then one of the other things I think that is a benefit is for Councilwoman Adamson's question is that over time requirements change, and sometimes business owners aren't quite fully aware of what has changed and the time frame they have to make the changes. A good example is the grease traps when they come in. There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth, but due to the expense. But again, if you know what grease does when it gets down in pipes and it gets cold and reacts and mixes, you understand the issues with it. So,
one other one that we talked about yesterday, and I really think that this is kind of that, when you think of a business, if I'm a business that's located in a mall or a strip-type mall, if I've got 3 vacancies around me, my business, there's kind of that synergy effect that the more businesses that are viable, that area is more attractive and it will bring more patrons nearby. And I want you to talk about the study, but I think that we want that success. So every time that vacancy sign hangs, it's kind of like the black hole. And I think the more we seem viable, a vibrant city, I think we all benefit. And you know, the person next door normally isn't competing with me. So we're really looking at, you know, we want that, I can go to this area and there's 4 or 5 businesses that I can go visit as I'm walking through that area, whereas if there's 1 business and 3 vacancy signs. And so I think that we want that success. We want, you know, the more we have turnover because they didn't know the requirements, they came in, they tried to do their life dream, now they failed, but now there's another vacancy sign and you're next door to them. Your property values go down, your business vitality, I think, goes down. Even though you have a great product, I think you don't have the traffic, the foot traffic, the draw, the thing that, I meant to walk into that place, and here I am doing something else, and now I'm going to go in. And tell them about
There's studies that have been done, and it's mostly in historic districts where you've got a lot of foot traffic, and where you have a vacant building and or a parking lot, and people are walking down the street. Most people will turn around at that point and not go further, even if there's a store down past that vacant place. Just it's almost like a wall is there. It's a psychological thing, and people will turn around and go the other direction. So even if they wanted to go into that store, they might get in their car and drive over there, but then again, they might not. They might figure, oh, I can go find it someplace else. So.
If we're considering a change in an ordinance for a particular type of business or general business at all, how do we let them know currently that those changes are happening? Or do they have to just find out on their own? The reason I'm asking is because with a licensing system, we would now have current contact information.
Right. Currently, we do it through Logan, our PIO. He puts out press releases, goes out in the mayor's newsletter, things like that. And I believe that's about our only avenue at this point. So if you're not reading those or hearing the news, then you could miss things.
How much, we're talking about having information ready for a business that would come in. How much workload is it going to be to get that information gathered and ready for them at the time that they come in versus, is there a difference from what we're doing now?
I don't think it will be difficult because it's all, we have the information, it's just not all in one place. Like I talked to somebody on the phone, starting up a new business, okay, you need to go see the state tax commission and you need to make sure you have building permits if you're making any changes, and you might want to go talk to Janae over in the police department to make sure you don't need a license for your business, since we do have specific licensing, and so this would just give them a packet of information to say, this is all you need. You don't necessarily need to go talk to 5 different people because 5 different people's packet is right here. And so I think it would help to have it a one-stop shop. They would still need to go to the state tax commission and the health department and things like that are out of our purview. But I don't think it would be burdensome to gather that information. We could just have special packets for alcohol licenses, daycare licenses, taxi cabs, and then everybody else type of thing.
Would this have any impact on grant writing for nonprofits or anything like that as they look at, well, Ms. Grant? Well, don't you do grants?
I do.
I know, so you're...
Melanie Gigley from Planning. I think actually this would be a benefit to a nonprofit or a business to prove that they are in line with the city's rules and regulations. We get calls, a couple thoughts that crossed my mind. We get calls saying, I don't have a business license. Well, how do I find X, Y, Z? So you start going down the line. In a grant, they frequently need something that says, from the city that says, yes, we are legit. And this could possibly be that for them. It would include their city license. So yes, the city, they are in line with the city's organizations, various organizations up front. I would see it as a benefit to them.
And I've actually had to write letters for business owners.
Okay. I'm basically opposed to any additional regulation and registration fees. I'm basically opposed to that. But I am very, very concerned in terms of and supportive of health and safety. And that is where my support would come. I'm very much in support of our licensing people so that we do not have the fly-by-night people coming in and competing with our, quote, legitimate businesses. I think whatever we do, we must justify the value added for the businesses, not just value added for the city. And I'm concerned that once this gets started, it will not be able to be just handled by Anselin. It's going to require additional people, and I certainly struggle with licensing of churches for other than contact for safety and access and things like that. So I need some additional justification before, the people that have talked to me, I'm opposed to it, a drugstore operator or others, I'm opposed to another fee. Don't want to increase that profit challenge for any business.
Along those same lines, I have the concern that many business owners would view it as essentially a tax on business owners, that they maybe don't understand the benefit. So even though you guys have explained it to us, maybe they just perceive it as a fee. And in your survey, a lot of those were very small businesses, only a couple of employees. $50 a year is a big deal to them. So, they might be more willing if it was only $5 or something like that, but I don't know if that's going to cover your bases as far as the extra. I don't know, that's just a concern I also have.
Yeah. Any others? Okay, so what do you want us to do? What's the next step?
The next step is we basically need guidance from you. Do you want us to continue going forward and draft an ordinance and do public outreach, or do you not want us to do anything and just say it's dead in the water?
I'd love to see a great discussion at a Chamber of Commerce general membership meeting. I think they would get the biggest attendance at the Chamber of Commerce general membership meeting, and I think we would have an outpouring of interesting information from the consuming public.
I think that's the right way to go, and I think what we felt is that we have kind of, in a sense, a baseline set of data, and certainly at this point, businesses oppose, in a fashion that I think would be political suicide for you to engage the process or implement it right now. I think what would be appropriate is to do the outreach, see if we can shift that number. Take this survey again, 3 months, 6 months after we do some outreach at the general membership, maybe some Rotary and some of the community groups, and then see if we can shift that number from the 60-30, 60-40 to the opposite, and see if we can maybe convince enough people, because I really do. I think, quite frankly, I could care less about the money part of it, other than we as a city can't, just do everything for nothing. I really think, like I said before, the pain I went through thinking of a person who had invested so much money in their livelihood to then say, but you need more, and that hurts me. I realize it's business and you're entitled to throw your money away if that's what you want to do, but I don't like to be that person, and especially when I also can't cave on that life safety issue. When I see things like the Ghost Ship and the White Snake concert, I'm sorry, fire code is established in people's lives. That's what it's established on, and so I'm not willing to forego or I can't really, because it's state statute, forego that code ordinance that says you have to have a proper exit, you have to have a fire extinguishing system. But when that costs you so much money that now your business is no longer viable, and you've started it, you put your shingle out, you're trying to be this going business, and after the fact, I find out and I say, I'm sorry, I can't let you continue to operate, that pains me. That puts me in a really uncomfortable position, but I have to fall on the side of safety, and that means I'm going to shut that person down. And that's not I don't think that's in the best interest of our community.
I think what I'd like is I'd like to see what an ordinance looks like. I'd like to see the outreach. In that outreach, my suggestion would be you do a quick small card survey of people's opinion on a certain color at the beginning of the meeting, before the meeting starts. And then once you give your presentation, do a second color card and see if anybody's opinions have changed.
That's a good idea.
Sounds good.
And with that, it'd be nice to have a little tighter clarification on what the definition of a business, I've heard church down here, is it going to be any place people gather? Is it going to be, something for, because most of the larger churches, I would assume, are coming for building permits or something. But I guess, some of these non-denominationals, I guess they can grab a building and and that, and there may not be the adequate. So a little more clarification on what we're going to define as a business.
And that would definitely be part of the ordinance, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Heidi?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
I've said enough.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for enduring 2.5 hours, council members. And that concludes our study session for today.